Test, test, 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello. Okay, hope everybody is doing well tonight. Welcome. I see Saria, I see Loha. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while, Loha. How are you doing? It's good to see you. And Shinigami, of course, welcome. Thank you again for sharing those drawings and for sharing the backstory. I really do like the characters you've created. Hope that you are going to enjoy your drawing session tonight. No worries. Yeah, I've been trying to fix my sleep schedule personally, so I am more than happy to encourage you to, to try to get enough sleep, especially if you got class tomorrow. That's very important. But I appreciate you guys saying hello regardless. We're going to get started in just a minute here. So as a brief introduction while I'm getting set up here, tonight we're going to be talking about Hashirama again. And basically, last time I think we had a great, I had a lot of fun kind of going over Hashirama's overall feats and statements and stuff like that, and looking it through some of his fights, including during the war, obviously. But there were a couple of things that I realized in thinking about the stream over the past week. One, I didn't really talk much about Yamato, and there is information that we can glean about Hashirama from Yamato as well. And then, in addition to that, I wanted to lay out a scaling chain, so to speak, because going into the later war arc, I kind of forgot about how many different iterations of Madara there are and how many power-ups there are arguably for him leading up to Kaguya. So if we're going to evaluate the claim as to whether or not Hashirama is the strongest shinobi, if that means anything, like what that actually means, and then how do we actually test that, we need to look at the late war arc as well as looking at before the war for some statements on Yamato. So tonight, the way I'd like to structure the stream is the first. Don't freak out. It's actually pretty simple. But for the first part, I drew a bit of a flow chart to try to help with some of the scaling stuff. So hopefully we can go over this, and I can basically say why I think each of the versions of Madara has different strengths and weaknesses, or has different power-ups and stuff like that, and show just how far above base Hashirama I think this version of Madara is that counts as as we get later into the war. I then want to just show some potential counter arguments. So I dumped some scans here that just go over how strong Madara is that I didn't mention last time, as well as collecting some stuff on Yamato and on the clones and stuff like that. So sorry this isn't formatted as well as I could have. I was just thrown together a little bit hastily. Damn it, that fucking message keeps coming back. Seems to really want to survive. So 1 second, let me clear my action queue over here from StreamerBot. Okay, there we go. So yeah, basically we're going to go over that. Of course, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions or check out any scans. I just wanted to make sure that before going back to reacting to or analyzing anybody's videos or anything like that, I was really mapping out my own perspective, my own arguments, and trying to cast a bit of a wider net than I did last time. That being said, for those of you who weren't here last time, or those who are curious why I'm obsessing over Hashirama of all things, there's been a meta argument that I've run into, so to speak, or an argument that has become, let's just say, more popular in the community. I think Sage of Thick Cows was the first one to put it forward, but I'm not sure. But he did do a video recently called "Hashirama is way stronger than you think," and the cornerstone of this argument is essentially that there's a statement in the 4th data book that says that I think it goes along the lines of it's describing Hashirama's wood style and his healing ability, and it says this incredible technique is one piece of evidence for why, or that, Hashirama is the strongest shinobi, right? So the argument goes that since the 4th data book, and of course be sure to watch his video in context, right? Don't just take it from me, I might not be quoting it exactly right. So as with any video that we're responding to, always make sure to go watch the original creators' content on their channel to give them the view, and to make sure that you're hearing it directly from their mouth, not filtered through somebody else beforehand. But that being said, my understanding of this argument here is that since the 4th data book says this thing, and the data books are apparently expository texts, which means that their intention is to inform, and therefore we can assume that the contents therein are accurate and factual and literal, unless proven otherwise, then we have to assume that this is correct, that Hashirama is the strongest shinobi. And then we have to figure out what the implications of that fact are. So if we go into the manga and we see a statement, for example, that somebody like Hashirama himself saying, hey, that guy over there is stronger than me, well, that seems to present a contradiction, right? That can't really work if the databooks are credible. And we know the databooks are credible, asterisk. So we have to figure out how to consolidate that fact and basically I don't want to like be too condescending or anything, but it reads to me as like essentially sculpting the data that we find in the series around this piece of quote unquote evidence from the data books because it must be true. Therefore, we have to conform our understanding to that necessarily true statement. But of course, there's a lot of evidence from the primary source, the manga, that may either contradict or support this. And so my goal was to first of all, just educate myself about Hashirama in general, because the character that I haven't really spent much time on previously. But also, just to try to help explain the perils of, like, latching onto one particular idea and letting that color your perception of everything else, right? I saw, hey, certain B, I just saw your message. You said apologetics for the data book entry. Yeah, it's basically that, right? It's sort of like, well, one way or another, we have decided that this is the fact that we are going to embrace. And then that leads the rest of our evidence as opposed to us looking at all of the evidence all together. Like the way that I tend to approach things and the way that I would encourage other people to approach like their videos and analyses is read as much information as you can about a subject and just like, gather it all together in one big bunch and then like lay it out on the table and look at it all together. Don't come to any conclusions until you have looked at as much as possible. Now, that being said, I am 100% sure that there is stuff that I missed here. There's stuff that I probably misread. There's stuff that I might have assumed was an accurate translation, which is a mistranslation. There's stuff that I just totally forgot about, right? Nobody is ever going to get like 100% of the available information interpreted correctly, gathered correctly, especially if they've like just started delving into a topic. I wouldn't ask that of anybody. But what I would ask is that when sorry, is that when we're doing our analysis together as a group, or like on any given subject, right? Get all the evidence that you can, at least a good chunk, a good sample size, a good survey first, and then don't like necessarily start with like be careful about the order in which you start drawing conclusions, right? Try to look at everything holistically, or to use a slightly pretentious term, in the gestalt, as opposed to like finding the first piece of evidence mean like, okay, because that's true, you know what I'm saying, right? Like just try and look at it in broad strokes. So that's what I want to try to do tonight. Of course, we're interpreting literature here. At the end of the day, if you want to think that Hashirama is the strongest shinobi in the entire Naruto universe and could like solo all the Otsutsuki at the same time, hey, it's okay, right? Like, you don't, if you're entering into a debate or you're like making a video and you're like purporting to accurately represent stuff for other people to educate them or whatever, well, that's one thing. You should try to be as accurate as possible, in my opinion, and like present the facts without too much personal coloration. But at the end of the day, like, we are reading literature. We're reading like books for ostensibly for teenagers. Anybody can enjoy them, but still. And we should allow ourselves to have some creativity and some fun with our personal interpretation. Headcanon is non-derogatory. Right? So my goal here is not to say like, hey, if Hashirama is your favorite character, here's why he sucks. There's a specific reason why I have a whole like section here dedicated to Hashirama respect. Up until very, very, very late in the series, he is, I believe, the strongest shinobi in the world in history. Apart from, I don't know if you consider Hagoromo to be a shinobi, or Ashura or Indra, maybe they would be stronger than him, I guess. But like in the main timeline that we're concerned with, up until the war, and then things change a little bit. So just going to go over all that. If we have time, I definitely like to talk about some of the debates that Sage of Thick Calves and other content creators have done on Hashirama, because what my goal is here, like one of my goals, in addition to just spending time with this character I enjoy, is to explain like what the pitfalls and the traps are of certain types of argumentation, like the apologetics that certain B mentioned before. And so it's like I do want to try to leave people with an understanding of traps and hazards to avoid when constructing your arguments. And I think looking at some of these debates is a great way to do that. That being said, I'm going to catch up on chat real quick, and then I think I'm going to follow the format that we used a couple of weeks ago, where for the first hour-ish, maybe a little less, of the stream as I'm explaining the scaling chain, I'm going to not read chat as much, and I'm going to focus on just getting the explanations, like sort of like a mini lecture. Of course, if you need to get in touch with me, if you have something urgent or you want to like call something out, please, use the at the thing, just tag me like that, and then I will notice that a lot faster, and I'll respond to it. And then, of course, we'll have like a discussion, like a group sync or whatever after that. We go over that stuff, and then we'll go on to analyzing, like talking about this other stuff. Probably next we'll do wood style and then the clone stuff. But yeah, of course, if you guys want to talk about anything else, feel free. This is just what I want the focus to be tonight, because then I think, if we have time, but honestly, we probably don't. We probably won't, given my pacing. If we have time at the end of the night, we'll talk about Sage's video, but that'll probably be more for next week. Will be our final video on the subject. So that being said, it's good to see you guys here. Thank you so much for stopping by. I see Hassan Tariq. Am I pronouncing that correct? Thank you for checking out the stream. Hassan says you're tired. Well, I hope that you can get some rest. Thank you for stopping by and saying hi, even though you're tired. But yeah, if you need to head out at any point, I totally understand. I am trying really hard to fix my sleep schedule. I'm really bad at actually maintaining consistent sleep. So, hope you're doing well overall, and I hope you can carve out some time for some self-care. It's very important. Let's see. Shinigami says, right now you're just crashing out over people misunderstanding Aizen. But that might be the fact that since I took the time to analyze him when other people don't want to, it's frustrating. Yeah, I'd be curious to understand to learn more about what your perspective is there. I don't know much about him as a character, but I understand he's a pretty popular character within the fandom, so it's not surprising to me that people would have polarizing takes over a character like that. Yeah, and certain B, I don't know if I said hi specifically, but hi, welcome, I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you again. Shinigami says, might get ready to hate on Madara. Well, I don't hate him for sure. I mean, I actually have come to I don't love him as a character. I don't love him as a villain compared to some of the other villains in the series. I think he does wind up kind of just iterating on some of the previous concepts and doesn't really introduce all that much that's brand new in terms of aesthetics or philosophy or whatnot. But that being said, I kind of didn't realize how crazy his jumps in power actually are throughout the war, and now I'm realizing why people glaze him so much. He does have a lot of insane feats. I mean, to me, one of the craziest things is how he just says, yeah, actually no, to the Edo Tensei, and just decides not only to rescind the contract, but also just his soul is starting to ascend to the next life or whatever, to go to the Pure Land, and he just says, actually fuck that, I'm staying here. He just flumps back into his body. He reassembles his disintegrating body, right? When he absorbs Sage Mode, we know how difficult it was for Naruto to acquire Sage Mode and learn how to master it, and the dangers of not being able to control it correctly. We know how oh, wait a second, I'm sorry, I forgot to turn on my little reactive image. One sec. And of course now I'm not finding it. Image reaction, there we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm I just saw your message, sir. The fake Briska. Well, first of all, is it Briska? Brisque? Thank you so much for checking out the stream. I appreciate it. Yeah, I would not put Minato over Hashirama. It's funny, I was just listening to a debate, or I was just going back and listening to Six's debate on Minato versus Hashirama, and I didn't get all the way through it, right? The one that he hosted anyway with, I think it was Shad. And I was noticing that there were some pretty spicy responses in the comments section. But yeah, I thought about that because TG also had a good video that I haven't watched it all the way through recently, but I did rewatch part of it earlier today, and he did make some good arguments for Minato's strength overall. I still got Hashirama winning that particular fight, but I do think Minato probably has an advantage in speed, and he has there's stuff that he can do, especially if he can access Senjutsu. But yeah, I would still put Hashirama over Minato. But yeah, anyway, it's good to have you. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, just Madara has this crazy ability to just immediately figure out intuitively how to use Sage Mode. When he becomes a Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he also, I mean, granted, he internally as a person, his psyche, his personality is much more consolidated. He has less internal conflict than somebody like Obito, who's like testing his ethics or whatever against Naruto. And that's a part of why he becomes like he's so unstable at first. But I think he's also just sort of overwhelmed by the Ten Tails chakra. Compare that to Madara. Madara is much more readily able to just like, you see him sort of like casually strolling into the role of the Jinchuriki. Where is it? I forget where I put it here, but yeah, when he becomes a Ten Tails Jinchuriki, right, he's just kind of like walking along and absorbing all of this stuff into him, and just immediately gets like the full six paths power. Well, one eye Rinnegan version of that, but still. So yeah, that being said, let me keep checking up on chat real quick. Hashirama says an unstable Jubi Obito victim. I do think so, yeah. I do think that that's the implication. We talked last time about how, this statement from Hashirama is that he acknowledges unstable Jubito as being stronger than him. And then there's a potential counter argument to that about, well, maybe it's just Hashirama's clone, so maybe it's just a clone saying, I, the clone, am not as strong as Obito, but my real body might be. But when you look at the dialogue here, and then like we'll go over this later, but if folks are watching the VOD and you want to pause and look at some of this stuff, I mean, there's a bunch of other scans throughout the war that add some nuance to it. I really do think that essentially it's a bit of a shaky argument, and there's more evidence to support Hashirama referring to himself in the first person through his clone, as opposed to regarding himself as a separate entity, like the clones are separate entities. I don't know if I have the scan here. I can pull it up later, but there definitely is a precedent for characters like Naruto referring to their clones as individuals, right? Like he leaves his clone after like fighting Madara and like when Madara has gotten like his 4 limbo clones. Naruto uses like Shukaku's sealing jutsu and the chakra rods and everything, and holds him in place, and he leaves a clone behind, and he says, hey, I'm gonna leave this to you, and the clone says like, hey, no problem, I got you, buddy. So like they regard each other as separate personalities, I think, but that's a Naruto thing more so than a Hashirama thing. So anyway, I do think that really, this this moment right here is when things change, and then it all scales up from there. In the favor of Madara versus Hashirama. But anyway, we'll get to all that soon. Shinigami says, honestly, I don't always watch other people's content before seeing the response, because people like Birdman and Anthony Gramuglia just make me go brain dead. That's fair. Yeah, like, honestly, I don't know if you were around for the, or checked out like the Dark Souls 2 streams we did, but part of why I went into Dark Souls 2 and investigated that stuff was specifically because people like Mahler and Feeble King and Matthew Matosis had done their reviews of Dark Souls 2 and had generated some, again, I'll say meta arguments about them that I wanted to address. I thought the game was sort of being treated unfairly, so to speak. And I tried really, really hard to get through Mahler's content, but I can't stand his voice. I know that's a petty complaint, but he just has this very, very condescending and like haughty and like snobbish attitude that is literally uncomfortable to listen to for long periods of time. I just couldn't bear with it, and so I have not heard all of his arguments from the horse's mouth. I did do so for Feeble and for Matthew Matosis, but whenever possible, I think I don't, not always 100% about this, but like when I respond to somebody's video, mostly because I have a bad memory and I want to make sure I didn't forget anything, but like I make sure to watch it at least twice through at regular speed, usually more than that, because I'll want to go back and like check things. And I think that ultimately, like, I'm gonna jump around, I might leave things out, I might like wind up skipping something accidentally, so just to like give people credit for the initial work that they do, I don't want to accidentally misrepresent it, right? Like, I remember in Sage's defense, I guess, like I remember watching Noodles and Surfbone react to some of his videos, or Six's videos as well, and they would put it on like 1.5x speed or 2x speed, and then they would just like stop it before hearing the full arguments and straw man, and then when they would realize they made a mistake, they would just jump ahead, and it was like really scummy shit. And so I really, wanted to make sure not to ever encourage that kind of behavior. Let's see. Certain B says, "Oh yeah, basically play apologetics for databook entry." Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my assessment as well. Shinigami said, "I don't think being dependent on databooks is valid. I think the databooks, as we mentioned before, are a useful source that provides information and entertainment. There's a lot of stuff you can learn from the databooks. I know I've said this before, but like Kakuzu's backstory, where he steals the hearts and like Jianggu ability and gets revenge on the people in his village, that comes from the databooks. Like I don't think it's ever mentioned in the main series." What's his name? Like Datara's like pop art versus like art being super flat. That is expanded on the data books in a way that isn't really in the story in the main manga. And there's a couple of other things like that. Like it's presented pretty straightforward as though like Jashin is an actual deity. But in the data books, I think it's the third data book, although it might be the novel. I'm pretty sure it's the third data book that it says something about how like Hidan was the byproduct of an experiment by the cult of Jashin. So there's a bunch of people who believe that Jashin is a thing, but it's not necessarily the case, and it might be more like um, Hidan is more analogous to Yamato than actually somebody who's been chosen by a literal god. He's just like a weird genetic freak and like experiment where he has like his jutsu is the byproduct of genetic experimentation and then his own technique as a shinobi as opposed to you know an actual deity like watching over him or whatever, right? So yeah, um, and that comes from the data book, so it can be useful. But it's like if you rely on it as like a word of God type thing, then I think you're maybe missing the point. Um, let's see. Shinigami then says Naruto is carried by the data books. Yeah, I think like a lot of the highest tier feats that people argue for, like light speed and universal, those arguments aren't coming from the series for the most part. Like I am aware that there is a novel that says that Momoshiki created his dimension or something. Like there's things like that that you can find. Like I disagree with this interpretation, but there is a line in the Haku novel that you can interpret as saying like lights that he's light speed. I think that's incorrect, but still, like I get where people are coming from. But at the end of the day, like the vast majority of the statements that people use for light speed are coming from the data books. Kaguya supposedly moving the entire universe out of the way and therefore being universal, or like creating dimensions as she pleases, stuff like that. That's all from the data books, right? So, Sage, in a recent interaction that we had, stated that he thinks I have an agenda, which is to destroy or like to combat universal Naruto arguments. That's not really true. I don't like them, and I would like to correct them. I would like to clear up the misunderstandings around them. But like my agenda, so to speak, is more that I think the data books are being misinterpreted, and this leads to misinformation and misunderstanding. And I would like to try to help fix that. If I genuinely believed that the Naruto characters in the verse were universal, I wouldn't go around just like fucking with people about it, right? So we can talk about that more later. Universal stuff is like a whole other topic that I've talked about at length now. Um, let's see. You sound like L's methods of logical reasoning. I think that's a compliment. I appreciate that. I remember L as being a pretty intelligent guy, so I'll take that as a compliment and say thank you. Sounds like a skill issue. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but we're usually on the same page about this stuff, so it might be. Saria, hey, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing okay. Saria says, I'm here, started playing Pokemon again and doing a battle where I have to win 10 times in a row without healing, and it's very frustrating. I refuse to change my team. I will power Ash Ketchum, power Ash Ketchum this. I mean, like, the more you talk about that game, the more I'm convinced that the Clair Obscure team directly inspired it, or maybe even helped work on it, based on some of the boss fights that you've described, some of the clips that you've shown. Like if literal Simon appears in the game as like a crossover promo, I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, oh, it's intelligence wise. Aizen's intelligence. Oh, okay, I understand. Yeah. I feel like intelligence is a subject that doesn't get talked about as much in power scaling because it's harder to quantify, and it's also like not as maybe impressive and fun to talk about as like big ass explosions or whatever. But it's very important, obviously. So I'm glad that you're giving it some serious consideration. Shinigami says, I think Hashirama is the strongest shinobi in context to the shinobi world rather than the whole. I'd be curious. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by in context there, but can you expand on that? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. I think that he is the strongest up until Jubito shows up, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Um, Oh yeah, Minato not beating Hashi. Shinigami then says, "Nah, just hate how Madara is glazed for style." Yeah, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The fake Brisky says, "I don't know how my name is pronounced, lol, but someone posted your stream in Sage's server, and I'm checking it out, enjoying it so far." Hey, that's great. I appreciate the share. I hope that, I can be a little negative. I can be a little nitpicky sometimes. I genuinely just hope that by the end of each stream, I'm able to like impart some knowledge. That's really my goal here. As critical as I can be, like really what motivates me is just trying to identify misconceptions and clear them up when I can, as well as just learning more about this topic. So like I am appreciative of this is going to sound like a backhanded compliment. I don't really mean it that way, but I am appreciative of Sage's videos as well as videos by people like Noodles and Key who I've disagreed with strongly in the past, because when I find something that I have like a very strong knee-jerk disagreement with, I don't feel like I can reply to it unless I do a bunch of research, which is why I have like a literal fucking spreadsheet flowchart here. Um, and I always wind up learning more about the series and appreciating it more as a result. So like I don't really care all that much inherently about Madara and Hashirama, but I do now. Like I care more about them now. I know more about their abilities and stuff now. So yeah, that's I'm honest honestly kind of glad for the opportunity. If I hadn't have seen Sage's video and found something worth talking about there, found the ideas interesting enough to try to address, then I wouldn't be talking about this now, but talking about something else, right? So I saw your message, Certain B. Just to respond to that real quick before I get back up through the list, Certain B, I'm talking about Von Key, the guy with the shark icon. So let's go to YouTube real quick. We talked about him on stream a little while ago. Oh, the Oscars are on. Von Key, Naruto Universal, something like that. Uh, this guy, yeah. So yeah, I don't know much about him overall as a content creator. I got nothing against the guy necessarily, but what I will say is that when we went over his Universal Naruto video, somewhere down here, and I found that a lot of the arguments, yeah, here, how strong is the Naruto universe exactly? This video over here, there was a lot of arguments over here that overlapped with Noodles' multiversal video, and I really pretty strongly disagree with a lot of them. I felt that they were, to my interpretation, I could be wrong, but they weren't necessarily offered in good faith. There was a lot of like kind of fidgeting with the numbers, and there was some very, let's just say, generous interpretations of certain things with bad citations, which didn't really impress me. And so we talked about this a lot, like 3 or 4 streams, I think. And then I saw that he did another one recently that I haven't gotten a chance to like get fully into yet. But yeah, one thing I do appreciate about Key is that he reaches far and wide for his sources. Like he brought up in this video, he brings up like Naruto Mobile and like a Naruto Gacha game, I think, and some stuff from Naruto X Boruto Connections that I hadn't heard of before. So yeah, you can see right there the Naruto Mobile thing. So like again, like to give some credit here, I just noticed that. Sorry to trigger you, Shinigami. Look at that. But yeah, I just to give some credit, you know, uh, I would never have looked at Naruto Mobile if not for the fact that Key happened to bring it up and I happened to respond to it. That being said, I didn't really appreciate his take on it. I thought it was pretty dishonest. I think he omitted some very important context from the videos that he showed, and it didn't really feel kind to his viewers, so to speak. But hey, he got me talking about it. He got me interested in it. So, that I appreciate that much, at least. Let's see. Where was I? Sage should make good arguments as to how Hashi's clones refer to themselves and not original Hashirama. So I disagree with that. At first, I thought that was the case when I just listened to his video or when I listened to him talk to, I think it was Walkie Talkie about the subject. But then I went back and reread it and I was like, yeah, so to give you a quick preview before we delve into the main arguments, like there's definitely some stuff that supports what he's saying, right? Because on the one hand, we have this statement over here where, Hashirama's clone is saying, do not give up all I am with you. And I think that he's probably saying this on 2 different parts of the battlefield. You can look at that as saying, okay, the clone is saying I. That makes sense. I think that's a good interpretation of that. So you could extrapolate from that to say, like, okay, well, the clones refer to themselves in the first person. Here's another example, right? I'm not 100% sure. I think this is one of his clones as well. So the clone is like saying we, he's destroyed my barrier, etc. So you might interpret it that way. But there's other things too, right? Like, again, just going over this very briefly, when Hashirama first sends his clones out, the clones all say like follow me, and they're sharing speech bubbles, they're speaking collectively, so they're referring to themselves not as singular entities, like they're all kind of speaking simultaneously. I don't think that really applies over there, but stuff like over here, right? I think this, where Hashirama talks to the overall Shinobi Alliance, is like, they recognize it's the clone talking, but they all refer to him and recognize him as Hashirama. Nobody says like, "Oh, it's Hashirama's clone. Thank you, his clone, for talking to us." But then, like, once you start to get over here, right? Hashirama himself is talking to the Shinobi Alliance, and he says like, "I beg you, all of our beloved children." Is it the clone? Is the clone begging people, or is the clone meant to be a mouthpiece for Hashirama? Like, what makes more sense narratively? Once we get over here as well, this conversation with Tsunade, did I include it here? Yeah, over here. So Tsunade is talking to the clone, and you can tell it's the clone because uh, you can see the sage mode markings aren't on his face. And he says, "It is I who've dragged this mess into my grandchildren's era. I am the true loser here." So is it like the clone himself? The clone thinks he's a loser, or is he speaking for Hashirama? I think it's probably fair to say, like, if I'm being as neutral as possible, that depending on the context, depending on the moment, Hashirama can refer to himself in the first person via a clone, or the clones could potentially just refer to themselves individually as I. Like, both of those can work. So you need to look at the context to understand like which one of them it is at any given time. The context for this, where is it? For his statement over here where he says stronger than me, yes, it's the clone talking, but then right after that, Tobirama says, "No offense, but it appears so, even if you blah 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 blah, you're no match, elder brother." Now, I know that Sage disputes the accuracy of the translation here because he says that the kanji, or the Japanese text for reabsorb, is not present. So if not to strawman his position, if I understand it correctly, he's like, well, we can't trust this translation overall because this part of it is incorrect. But when I looked at the Japanese that he showed on his stream and I translated it, I ran it through a bunch of different Japanese dictionaries and translators, consistently the phrase elder brother or brother shows up. So it does indeed seem to me like, regardless of whether or not you agree with the interpretation of reabsorb or remaining doppelgangers or whatever, it is Tobirama acknowledging that the clone is speaking on behalf of Hashirama himself. He's not like, "Yeah, you the clone, good for you." He's like, "Yes, brother, my actual brother," right? So if you put that all together, what we're really evaluating here is like, is there a valid interpretation here for this representing Hashirama himself? I think so. Is there a potential argument that it's the clone referring to himself? There is a way to make that argument based on other data from these other moments. I'm not saying there's no counter arguments, but in context, it makes much more sense that Hashirama is referring to himself. And then if you test the statement stronger than me, if you actually go up from here and look at the scaling, look at the feats, look at what happens over the course of the fight, then yeah, this statement is supported by what we see feat wise and what we see like moment to moment battle wise, right? It's all reinforcing this. So that then retroactively, I think, comes back to support the idea that this is Hashirama talking about himself. Anyway, I said I was only going to take a second, but that's basically the argument, right? So that's a summary of what I was thinking about there. That's just my take on it. Shinigami says, honestly, Mahler's more bearable than Birdman in short bursts. By Birdman, do you mean like the guy who's been debunked? Like he, is it like the Birdman? He debunks like CinemaSins videos? I think I've seen some of his stuff before. I might even be subscribed to him, actually, if that's the guy you're talking about. Shinigami says, but it's valid to think Mahler is sometimes being unfair. Yeah, I really strongly dislike him. That being said, even people I dislike, I will be happy to check out content if you think there's something I'm missing. I also can't stand Noodles arguing. Yeah, I really don't like his approach to debates, to engaging with his community. Oh yeah, Birdman the CinemaSins guy. Yeah, I know his stuff. I'm kind of surprised that you don't like him. I feel like Is it just because he's like a bit like condescending and kind of rude, that sort of thing, or do you like disagree with his arguments as well? Um, yeah, Noodles. So again, like to give people credit, Noodles comes up with interesting shit. The whole Kakuzu versus Pain debate. I mean, granted, that was Webcam Parrot, I think, who first started like that meta, but Noodles expanded it and he brought up some interesting points. Multiversal Naruto. That video of Noodles, I think, is really not good. It has a lot of bad faith argumentation and like really just janky there's a lot of problems with it. I've already talked about it at great length, so I won't go over it all. I very, very strongly disagree with that video. But hey, it's an interesting topic, right? The thing is, if Noodles like made all the same arguments that he did, but did so without being like a massive douche to other people and like being like low key, I don't know, just like homophobic and stuff, like his other like abusive, harassing, gaslighting, manipulative persona, if he left that behind, then I would actually love to hear him keep coming up with like crazy arguments because they get the discussion going. I say this every stream, but like fucking Gamma Bunta versus Kid Choji. I love that idea. I love the idea of having a debate about that. That's great. Don't love the way things went down between him, Jay, and V1 Batman. Um, but if there's an alternate universe where they're all friends and they keep coming up with like cool meme arguments and like I get to enjoy that without the toxicity. I wish we lived in that parallel timeline, but whatever. Um, Noodle's a king of machine gunning points and not letting you answer. Yeah. He's definitely heavily invested in his skill tree of like debate tactics, so to speak. You have fun talking about intelligence, says Shinigami. Yeah, me too. I think we talked before about Naruto's intelligence, right? You mentioned that you had seen that stream or something. I think Naruto's intelligence is one of his greatest assets, and it's not like book smart learning intelligence, but it's a different form of intelligence, but it's still very important. It's a huge part of his character and his like battle acumen, so to speak. Um, let's see, the fake Brisky, or sorry, I keep changing the pronunciation. I think I'll say Brisket. The fake Brisket says, "Ayo, no worries. I'm not a Sage simp, so if you debunk his arguments, I'm all for it." Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not a Sage hater either. I'm very frustrated with Sage's content because I feel like it's not in good faith, to put it very briefly, and I'm very frustrated at the fact that like I personally went from being like a paid subscriber of his channel and really enjoying his stuff to then having a bit of a falling out, and like when I try to engage with him, it doesn't go well. I will own my part of that and say that I can be an ornery little bastard sometimes. Like I am very nitpicky and very like stubborn about certain things, but at the same time, like I do feel like I engage in good faith, and I don't feel like that always gets reciprocated. So I'm just kind of like fed up with how the meta of certain manipulative or at the very least deeply incurious arguments are still spreading around in the community. It feels like a waste of everybody's goddamn time, and I wish it would stop. But that being said, I also have some positive things to say from time to time. I'm not trying to like slander anybody as an individual. I just like I feel like we're better than this as a community. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I don't think I am. And so I'm looking forward to the day where we all kind of like shake hands and are like, yeah, that was fun, but we're done. We can move on to like actual good arguments. As arrogant as that might sound, I think that it would be insulting to the intelligence of people like Sage to say that they actually believe some of the stuff that they're saying. I think they're smarter than that. So it is me giving the benefit of the doubt to say, hey, I don't think you're arguing in good faith, if that makes any sense. Let's see. Shinigami says, what I mean by being limited to the shinobi world for Hashirama's statement is for accounting for the Leaf Village Ninja or the other villages. Oh, yeah. The whole includes Jubito and anyone who upskills. Yeah, that's fair. I would disagree with your take, but I appreciate the clarification there. At least I think I understand what you're saying. We'll see as we go through the discussion. Certain B says that I don't like his arguments. Yeah, I don't either. Trying to give like some positive commentary for his breadth of knowledge or information or research or whatever. But, not only that, but like very quickly switches to personals when you try to engage with him, so that's usually pretty telling. Shinigami's not much of a fan either. Oh yeah, you saw the Oscars, Saria. The Oscars went, hello everybody, my name is Markiplier, walks into the room. Yeah, dude, I'm pissed I didn't get to see Iron Lung in the theaters, but man, I hope he gets all the recognition he deserves. It definitely seems like a bit of a landmark for an independent movie, from what I've seen, and just to see that game as well go from go through all of its like making the rounds to then becoming a movie like that is really cool to see. I love the game. There was one thing about it that that irked me a little bit, but for the most part, like the concept, the execution, the atmosphere, it's really really cool. So I'm glad that like more people know about it right now. And honestly, like I've become pretty jaded about the Oscars as well, so I'm more than happy to see like some variety. I hope it does get some acknowledgement there. Um, Fake Brisket says, "Dang, you honestly better keep the stream up for me to reference." Yeah, absolutely. So just for the record, on my where's the best way to get there? I guess just to go to my channel here. If you check out my live section, I leave all of the. Oh, thank you for the new subscriber, whoever just subscribed. I appreciate it. I leave all the stuff that I've done up here. Uh, I responded to, if you're interested in more of like what I've had to say about Sage's stuff, these two streams were talking about his recent light speed video. Uh, this stuff over here was just a general overview of the Sasuke versus Datara fight. It wasn't a response to anything. And this as well was just like a general video, not responding to anybody. This was a response to Sage's databooks video. The Naruto versus Pain stuff, or Sage Naruto versus Pain, was just fun. Sakura versus Madara was just for fun. It was like a meme thing. But then, oh yeah, so I actually did 6 fucking streams on it. The Universal Naruto stuff is over here. 6, 5, 4. Like all of these are responses to Key's videos. It took me that long to get through it. I don't expect anybody to actually watch through all of them, but like if you're interested in one particular topic, like this one, we talk about Road to Ninja. So if you want to learn more about that, you can find that information here, etc., etc. So yeah, let me know if you're curious about. Oh yeah, we talked about Sage's videos on geography as well. We did a couple episodes on that. So yeah, let me know if you need help finding anything, or if there's a topic you're interested in. We've gone over a lot of stuff over the past year, and I plan to leave this stuff up like indefinitely. As long as my channel is up, all this stuff will be available if you ever want to go back and rewatch it. Let's see. Oh, Birdman. Yeah, we talked about Birdman. Shinigami says, as much as I have fun talking about IQ, I think I have a genius problem in my manga. Oh, you think you've like scaled their intelligence a bit too high? Like they're all like super super clever? Yeah, I mean, if you do that, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But like for every L, like, or every light, you have to have an L, right? Like for every Sherlock, you have to have a Moriarty. You have to have, or if not that, you have to put them in some situation where their intelligence can still be tested. I mean, that's one way to write the story. You don't have to, but like, you might want to give them like a hurdle to overcome like that, right? I think Sage is doing the BBC Sherlock problem. He grabs one piece of evidence that could mean so much else, but tries to push for one thing. It's a possibility. I think that like, yeah, he has a tendency to employ double standards and to, I think, just like, so he introduced this phrase to me, the concept of clearing a point, right? We disagreed about something about like Toneri and his like moon level abilities and something, and when I pointed out like X, Y, or Z things that I consider to be debunks or counters, Sage's response was, well, I can still clear this point, I can still win this point, right? It's like that's not mutually exclusive to the idea of making good arguments, but what I got out of our interaction there was like, and not just him, by the way, like people who just focus on debating as a meta or like that style of argumentation, are primarily motivated by how they can clear points and win arguments. And look, it can actually be a very good, very healthy and productive intellectual exercise to argue in favor of a position that you don't necessarily agree with, to take the underdog or the devil's advocate position, because it will probably result in you like looking at things from a different perspective and then challenging your ability to like just your argumentative ability overall, right? Like a lawyer advocating for something you don't necessarily believe in, right? But presenting the best possible challenge to your opponent, and then they have to work hard to challenge you back as well. Like it can be positive, but it's important to be straightforward that that's what you're doing. That's something that I appreciated from some of the videos I saw from TG and Six, that like I disagree with them on their conclusions about certain things related to Lightspeed Naruto, Universal Naruto, but they were pretty clear that like, hey, this video was commissioned, so I'm doing this because I'm accumulating all the data. I might agree with some things, disagree with other things, but here it is for you to figure out for yourself, right? Like, you can come to your own conclusions, you don't have to disagree. It's not like this hardline thing. The thing that bothers me about Sage is like, or at least these particular arguments that he's making, not him as a person necessarily, is that he'll be like, this definitionally is this thing. There is literally no way around it. The data books are literally expository texts. That is a fact. And basically, any counter evidence is an exception that proves the rule. That kind of mentality really makes it extremely difficult to have anything like a productive dialogue, because it's like, well, you're not looking at the whole data set, you're not looking at the whole body of evidence and then gathering everything, coming to a conclusion based on that. You really are advancing a position that's in favor of one tiny chunk of evidence. And I don't like understand the motivation for doing that beyond maybe just like trying to drum up some minor controversy to get a conversation going. But there's better ways to do that, in my opinion. I don't, I don't know what you mean by based bigots. I certainly have run into quite a bit of bigotry in the Naruto community, which is very fucking frustrating and disappointing because, as I mentioned before, this is a series about like a little kid who is an outcast, a pariah, and who is bullied and treated differently because he has like this gross thing inside of him, and he learns to deal with that hatred and prejudice with empathy, kindness, and understanding. And so the idea that like the series gets used as fodder for argumentation by unrepentant outright bigots is really weird to me. And I will just say that, yeah, I don't want to get too deep into. I really don't like community drama stuff, so I won't get into that. But let's just say that there was some of that in a recent debate tournament that was very fucking disappointing. But whatever, I can't control that, right? So Shinigami said, I hated how Birdman acted in the Tourette's drama. Oh, I have no idea about that. If you would like, no pressure, of course, but feel free to send me a video in either on the Discord in the vid recommendation channel or through PM, and I'll check it out. I have a pretty good opinion of him overall, but if there's stuff I missed, like I want to know the full picture. Oh, you agree with the stance? Okay, that's good. That's cool. You have bits to say about Naruto's intelligence, but I personally think the smart characters in Naruto have tried to plot like there's as smart as the plot wants them to be. That can be the case, yeah. Honestly, like the level of calculations that some of the little kids do, you know, in like part one, there's 12-year-olds doing like complex math for calculating the angles and trajectories of projectiles and stuff like that, you know. There's and like Shikamaru's intelligence, like he says he doesn't understand music, so the fact that he's able to decipher the finger movements of Tayuya and learn how to basically recreate the music despite having no musical ability himself. I mean, like, granted, he's touted to be a genius from the beginning of the series, but at the same time, that's still like crazy, right? It's an amazing feat. Let's see. Sorry says, oh no, you don't watch the Oscars. The same reason I only watched the Game Awards last time because of Expedition 33, because it was my culture. Otherwise, I don't care. Oh, there's probably going to be some French film that shows up. There usually are some French directors that contribute something, but yeah, I mean, like it just seems like a weird sort of like mutual patting on the back festival. The whole like celebrity culture that emerges from there is really kind of creepy and weird and like uncanny valley to me, so I don't really follow it at all. Let's see. Sorry says, I mean, I'm not getting any of those millions of dollars. They're not close friends. Who should I inherently care about? So for me, it's like, well, look, if you're part of the culture and the culture is what winds up winning the award, I think that you should get a cut of that. Like, as a legitimate French person, any like French cultural success should have some trickle down like royalties paid to you. And like, I think that's only fair, right? Because without the culture, you don't get the art. Shinigami says, "Oh, you have too many of the genius characters." Yeah, that makes sense. I sounded like Sage for a moment. I'm curious what part you were referring to there. Certain B says the databooks are filled with poetry saying that they are only expository text is factually incorrect. Yeah, exactly. So I understand, like I've heard many people kind of make this mistake, not to be too arrogant or whatever, but like they'll look at the back of the book and be like, look, read the back of the book. It says the purpose, like they'll pick up the third data book as a common example. It says the purpose of this book is to inform you and to help you understand. Why would they lie to you? Why would they have like a bunch of metaphor and abstraction in there? That would make it more difficult for you to understand when the express purpose is to help you understand stuff. And I'm like, that actually makes sense. I understand where you're coming from. But if you read the data books like from cover to cover, you will find that like there's an assumption there. The assumption being that, like, in order to inform and instruct and educate you, they are going to use language that is meant to be interpreted literally in the vast number of cases, and they're going to use language that uh, very closely and accurately reflects what's happening on panel. And that is just not the case, mathematically speaking, factually speaking, if you just read the data books. So I think I don't really want to speculate too much about why this is the case, but it definitely feels like people are they want to be able to I don't know if this is unfair, I don't know, but like it feels like people want to be able to make cool arguments. The data books support those cool arguments, and so they find a way to be like, you know what, I don't really have to scrutinize the data books too much because I want to be able to make my cool arguments, and this is enough for me to go off of, right? I feel like I have enough justification. I don't need to do all the research. I honestly feel a little bit like an asshole because I'm coming here and saying like, hey everybody, please, hey everybody, everybody's attention please for a second. Stop having fun immediately. Everybody, cease enjoyment at this instant. You're not allowed to have any more fun because you're all wrong, right? Like, and it feels kind of shitty, which is like why I've tried to start saying like, hey guys, headcanon is okay. Genuinely, it's not like a backhanded compliment. It's actually good. It can be very healthy. It's just within the context of like debating or power scaling videos or something where it requires a little bit more precision, and when you're representing, like summarizing, shorthanding content for an audience, I think you have a responsibility to be fair and honest about that. And for whatever reason, the people that I responded to, I don't feel are doing that. And it's actually really frustrating because it's so easy to like when I started doing Naruto videos, I was inspired by like I got back into this community after listening to debates by like Swagkage and Noodles and stuff like that. And I just kind of accepted that the data books were 100% accurate because that's how they were portrayed. And I probably made arguments myself to that effect that like, well, it says in the data book that like Kakazu is as strong as the Biju, so he would be able to at least fight all the Biju, right? Like individually. But then I got curious and I started reading the data books, and like within 2 or 3 hours I was like, wait, this is not how this has been portrayed, like just factually speaking. And don't take it from me, like if you're reading this and you're curious and you haven't read the data books, like I say this every stream, but seriously, you can get the third data book, which is the one with the full like official English translation, for 10 or 15 bucks on Amazon or Crunchyroll. It'll take you maybe 5 hours to go through it, maybe. I'm a really slow reader, but I got through it in about that time. It's got a lot of pictures and illustrations and cool factoids, and I think it's even got like a bonus comic in the end and like interviews and stuff. It's great. I would recommend it to literally any Naruto fan. Or just pay attention as you're going through it, right? Like we talked about this again, but this is a scan of it, right? If we go down, I also have the hard copy just for legal reasons, but like literally the first entry starts off like the first major text of the first entry starts off by calling this character swift as a shooting star. So like and then like I know I think How About No also mentioned before that the shinobi data thing, like this page over here, this is not really an accurate translation, but in the English version, it starts off like the shinobi data section starts off with a fucking poem. In the shadows of a turbulent world walked 132 shinobi whose tread left not a trace. Like obviously they left a trace, they left a legacy, they literally leave footprints in the desert and shit like that, right? So to say that they didn't leave a trace is like really, really weird. But that's the point. Like there is stuff in the data books that is dry and literal and mathematical, like, oh, look at how many missions Choji has, right? But then there's also a statement that like Choji squishes everything in front of him. He like flattens mountains with a single whim or whatever. You know, it's nuanced, and that's the biggest thing that's missing from these discussions is nuance. But yeah, also, How About No? Thank you for stopping by. Hope you're doing well. It is good to see you. Thank you for the just Boruto Mitsuki's raw dogging air resistance equations. I don't know how I feel about the use of raw dogging, like how flexible that term has become. I just yeah, that's I might have to incorporate that into I encourage everybody to raw dog the data books. Have fun with that. Yeah, that makes sense. I think like the baseline intelligence for Naruto characters is like very high, at least for Shinobi. With some exceptions, obviously. But yeah, thank you for the ongoing conversation in the Discord. It's been super fun. I will try to get I've been meaning to like try to do some math about the kunai and stuff like that. I just got distracted with like preparing for the stream, but I do want to give that a shot. If you have any additional thoughts about that, let me know. Otherwise, I'll try to update that in the next couple of days. The Fake Brisket says, which debate tournament were you referring to? I certainly don't doubt the quality of some people in the community, but I don't think it's that big of an issue. It was Sage's debate tourney that he did a little while ago, and I will say that the vast majority of people who participated in the tournament, it was in the lives, right, did a good job. This video over here actually sort of inspired me to go through and talk about data around Sasuke, right? Because I really liked the arguments that they were making and I wanted to explore it more. This was great. A lot of these were fun. I'm like 80 to 85% sure that one of the people in round one was Noodles with a voice changer. Whoever it was definitely using a voice changer. But apart from that, the vast majority of the arguments were interesting, and the debaters argued in good faith. And I will give Sage credit for the fact that like the content of his that I've enjoyed the most has been when he's run tournaments and like invited people on and basically just been a curator. He's usually pretty good about finding decent people, giving them a platform, letting them talk, and then keeping things positive. So yeah, let's get started on the discussion of Hashirama. Really what I wanted to do to start off this stream and to kind of progress the discussion on this topic is that I wanted to review, yeah, Shinigami, we usually have like a just sort of a huddle, so to speak, at the beginning of each stream where we catch up and just kind of shoot the shit for a while, which I love, frankly. Like, I love connecting with people and hearing how you guys are doing, what your thoughts are, and then it usually transitions into like a lecture, sort of, and then like or a video response, and then it goes into the actual like wrap up after that. So to recap where we left off last time, and to just present an overall overview of the topic, what we are considering this evening is whether or not Hashirama is the strongest shinobi. As for what that means, unclear. There is a statement in the 4th data book about Hashirama being the strongest shinobi. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. Sorry, I should have had this available because we talked about it last time, but I'm pretty sure that is like Senju Hashirama, right? So in Hashirama's databook entry in the 4th databook, I think it's under healing ability. Yes, here we go. So under Hashirama's entry in the 4th databook, his character profile, we have this statement: for Orochimaru, who had an insatiable desire for immortality, Hashirama's regenerative abilities were a critical target of research, etc., etc., etc. That unrivaled characteristic was one of the substantiating factors for Hashirama being the strongest ninja. I've also seen this translated as one piece of evidence that Hashirama is the strongest ninja, and that is the translation that Sage of Thick Calves used for his video. Not just him, but Sage in particular has put forward the argument that because of that, Hashirama is the strongest shinobi. What does strongest mean? Well, it's unclear. It's not like defined here very precisely, but in general, the community tends to converge on the idea that strongest means like not necessarily the strongest in lifting strength versus striking strength or whatever, but an overall sense of strength that means that they are like the best in combat in some sort of general holistic way. So the goal here is to evaluate, is that claim true? Is Hashirama the strongest? If so, at what point, like, how far does that statement go? Like, how late into the series, how high up into the scaling does it go? If there's a point at which Hashirama stops being the strongest, then what point is that? When does that actually transition and stuff like that, right? So last time we went over a bunch of feats from like the Valley of the End and stuff like that. And my interpretation was, even though there's a little bit, let me just do this real quick. Even though there's a little bit of, ambiguity here or there, there are some potential counter arguments here or there. I think I've come around to the idea that Hashirama is the strongest shinobi in particular in the first part of the series. So when Hashirama is fighting against Madara, he is stronger than Madara in that particular fight, in the Valley of the End, when they are both alive. And that gives him a platform from which to be considered the strongest shinobi until proven otherwise, essentially. And that, like, proven otherwise point happens when Jubidara, Ten Tails, Jinchuriki Obito enters the scene, right? We're not going to go through all of this, but as a brief overview of what happens, we have perfect Susanoo Madara with Kurama fighting against Hashirama in base over here, and Hashirama is able to fight against them evenly. Then Hashirama like goes into sage mode. He strips off the armor. Madara's cutting down the mountains over here. Blah blah blah. Biju bomb. Hashirama's running away. Rashomon Gates deflects the Biju bomb to the other shore. It's been a while since we fought all out, but he's not in sage mode yet. Then he says, "Okay, I guess I have no choice." Even though I don't want to kill you, so be it. Activates Sage Mode, summons the Thousand Arm, Thousand Arm Kanon. They clash together for a little while, and then it skips forward, right? Like the armor gets stripped off of the Majestic Attire Susanoo, if that's what it's called. I guess it's like slightly different, but I don't know. I think it's called Majestic Attire Susanoo, right? Anyway, the armor gets stripped off of it. Madara winds up destroying the arms of the Kanon, and then the statue itself walks forward. They keep fighting, and then eventually, like, Madara wins. Hashirama seems to be pretty fatigued and seems to be wounded, so Madara seems to have displayed relativity to him. They are essentially fighting on roughly even footing, but at the end of the day, Hashirama does win, and Hashirama is, like, stronger than him overall at this point in the story. I think this is reinforced by a few things. Like, there's a bunch of different statements across the series that refer to Hashirama as a god of shinobi, as peerless, etc., etc. But a couple of statements that I think help this quite a bit are that Kabuto says there's no shinobi alive today who is as powerful as the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. That Madara is technically not alive, but I think you could fairly interpret it as like, well, Madara is alive in some regards, so he's being included there, especially when you consider that, like, over here, like Kabuto says, the first Hokage was even more powerful than Madara. This fusion of both will be my ultimate weapon, right? You combine that with their apparent relativity in combat. You combine that with the fact that Hashirama didn't really want to kill him. That might have resulted in him holding back a little bit. I don't know how to quantify that, but it's still relevant, right? Obito as Madara does say that Hashirama stood atop the ninja world. I know what the nitpicky, like, debate bro argument would be in counter to this, which would be like, well, technically speaking, more than one person can stand at the top of something. I won't even make that argument. I do think that what Obito is saying here, well, quote-unquote Madara is saying here, is that Hashirama was the strongest shinobi. He himself was at the top. He was at the peak, right? And so then, like, there's plenty of other statements about Hashirama being, like, incredible and having, like, insane medical jutsu, like being able to heal himself and stuff, and being able to, like, turn off the Nine Tails and all that. Do I actually have that feat here? That was one thing I want to bring up, because we'll talk about it later, about how Yamato, like, how Kakuan's 10th Edict on Enlightenment and how Wood Style, like, suppressed the Nine Tails, right? So, like, this is going to be relevant later. Kakuan's 10th Edict on Enlightenment, hand with the kanji on it, goes forward, Madara dodges out of the way, but it basically turns off Kurama, basically, like, puts him to sleep, right? So, Hashirama is described as having, like, total control over the Biju, which only Madara has in addition to that, but the way that Madara achieves that is with the Genjutsu. Hashirama's using his wood style, so I don't know. I personally, after reviewing all the data, I came to the conclusion that I agree that Hashirama is the strongest at this point in the story. At the Valley of the End, they are relative to one another. They can harm each other, they can perceive each other's movements, but overall, Hashirama is stronger. There's more evidence to support that. Now, where it gets complicated, it gets simpler after that, but the most complicated part of the scaling comes in when they are both Edo Tensei, right? We have this statement from Tobirama that when they are brought back as Edo Tensei, they are near their full strength. And people interpret this to mean that, like, the Edo Tensei themselves are not at full strength by definition, right? Like, they are... I forget where it is. Hopefully you guys are okay accepting that without me, like, finding this specifically. It's somewhere in here, right? Where they're like, Oh, I found it. Okay, right. So this is chapter 620. The fact that you've upped the precision of the Edo Tensei since last time we were downfall. Now that we've been revived that close to our original power. So some people are like that, and they're like, okay, the Edo Tensei, at least Orochimaru's Edo Tensei, aren't as strong as they were in life, and that applies to Hashirama as well. The thing is, without getting too much into like the Edo Tensei debate, because we covered that previously, I do think that overall, it's hard to quantify what that debuff might be being an Edo Tensei, especially since like we don't actually have any proactive statements from any of the characters as Edo Tensei about like, oh shit, it sure sucks that I'm an Edo Tensei. I used to be a little bit stronger. I wish I could be stronger, and if only I had my living self to rely on the power of, then I would be, doing better overall. Um, the only one who like sort of kind of has a statement like that is Madara, but the rest of them don't. We have statements about like Mu and Rasa having ninjutsu that are on par with their alive selves, despite the fact that they're Edo Tensei. So the way that I look at it is this: is that like there might be a slight decrease in overall physical energy and maybe even mental and like mental slash spiritual energy coming from these Edo Tensei because A, they're not in their real bodies, and B, they're still like under the effects of a jutsu. They're not like 100% normal. And C, like they're dead. So I don't know. Maybe there's like some weird effect that prevents them from acting fully. There's another statement somewhere here about like Madara's like, I don't know why you and your brother can't exhibit your full power. Yeah, is it this one over here? Yeah, this is in chapter 661, page 09. Madara says, there's a reason why you two brothers can't regain your full power, whether coincidence or inevitable. I've got the edge right now, right? So there does seem to be like a thread of evidence there that Edo Tensei are somehow unquantifiably a little bit weaker than their alive selves. However, if you define strength as like overall combat efficacy, overall like ability to do shit in a fight, you have to remember the Edo Tensei also have infinite stamina regeneration, therefore infinite chakra regeneration, and infinite health regeneration. And those are massive assets. I think being an Edo Tensei is more inherently a boost to Madara than Hashirama, since Madara doesn't have Hashirama's like baseline regenerative abilities to begin with. But that being said, overall, I think becoming an Edo Tensei is a buff. Like it is you might get a stats decrease by some minor amount, but you will still be better, more of a threat overall in combat because you can't fucking die and you can't run out of energy either. So I mean, when Madara becomes, I don't know if I have the scan here, but when he gets fully resurrected, he says like, yeah, if somebody rescinds, or sorry, when he like rescinds the summoning contract, he says now you have like the worst possible situation. You have somebody with infinitely regenerating stamina and infinitely regenerating like health who cannot die and cannot be controlled, right? So like the Edo Tensei, if you like if you have control of your faculties, Edo Tensei is a buff overall, I think. So we have a really weird situation with Edo Tensei Madara versus Edo Tensei Hashirama. Hashirama is reduced in strength by some vague degree, possibly maybe. Also, I don't think I was gonna say like maybe him being in a Zetsu body affects things, but it's his cells anyway, so I don't think that matters. But in the meantime, there are a couple of other mitigating factors that might affect how Hashirama works in combat. For one, like chakra is a combination of mental and physical energy, right? So he's been in the belly of the Reaper for 3 years or something like that. How did that affect him? I don't think it did. I think this is mostly like a meme thing that I'm bringing up here because none of the Hokage say anything about what it was like to be like fighting their fellow Hokage in hatred and like Death God stomach acid for 3 years. So maybe that was just a meme and that didn't actually happen. I don't know. Just bringing it up for fun. But we also, so when a character is brought back as an Edo Tensei, they are brought back in like roughly the same state they were before they died. So like the third Hokage or third Raikage, excuse me, comes back with the scar in his chest and he like looks kind of old. Chio looks kind of old. Nagato can't walk, stuff like that, right? He's emaciated. We talked about that last time. So we don't really know for sure what state Hashirama was in when he died. My personal headcanon, which is completely like head ass, I guess you could say, but it's like it's just like my own invention. I think he probably died like pretty soon after the fight with Madara. I think his strongest alive showing might have been in this fight during against Madara, but I don't know. It's just my headcanon, right? The fact of the matter is we don't know for sure when Hashirama died. So it's possible he could have gotten stronger after this fight with Madara. It's possible that the accumulated experience of this fight winds up affecting him and making him a stronger shinobi later. It's also possible that having like done so much regeneration, resulted in him shortening his lifespan and maybe made him weaker. We don't know, right? These are like questions like up in the air. In my opinion, just like as a reader of the series, I don't think Hashirama's supposed nerfs are relevant at all. I think basically as an Edo Tensei, he is equivalent roughly to how he was when he was alive. Maybe he's a little bit weaker in terms of overall AP output or whatever. Maybe he's a little bit stronger because of the Edo buffs, like the regeneration. But I think for all intents and purposes that he is essentially the same. We do see him use the deity gates, same in terms of overall combat efficacy. We do see him use the deity gates when he is an Edo Tensei. We don't see him use them when he's alive. I think Sage argued that he might have gotten the gates after the Valley of the End fight, because otherwise why didn't he use them against Madara? That's a little shaky, but I definitely could understand that argument. Madara is really confusing because when Madara died, he was an old man on life support connected to a tree. He wasn't really able to survive without the influence of the god tree itself, right? So if Kabuto just brought him back in that state, he would have been like an old, withered, useless, old man, not being able to do anything. So Kabuto had to make some modifications to him, including giving him Hashirama cells, and then that version of Madara, the Edo Tensei initial Madara, also had the Rinnegan. So with that being said, this initial version of Madara that starts fighting Hashirama has bonuses in the form of regeneration and Hashirama cells for durability and effective immortality, but then also has an undetermined age buff or age debuff, excuse me, that Kabuto then tried to counteract to some extent, and maybe he was successful and maybe he wasn't. We have this is it under the Madara respect thing? Yeah, okay. So we have this back and forth between Kabuto talking through Mu as well as Madara, and they seem to kind of disagree about the extent to which Madara was restored at his former strength, right? So this is a little out of order. This is chapter 560.03, 560.15, 560.09, 561.09. So sorry, it's a lot out of order here, but Kabuto says to Madara, your Edo Tensei is quite special. I even fixed you up a bit. You're now even greater than when you were alive. So based on this first statement, if we take this out of context, then Madara himself right now is stronger than when he was alive. So he might be stronger than, certainly than Edo Hashirama, if not alive Hashirama at this point. But then he says, wait, do you actually know what the fuck you're talking about? And Kabuto backtracks and he says, no, I'm actually not sure, which is why I want to see your Uchiha power in action here. Right? So then they admit that he awakened the Rinnegan, and then Kabuto says, I told you I've made you even greater than when you were alive, blah, blah, blah. They go back and forth. He says, I'm testing out this hypothesis, and now you're proving that hypothesis true. You're able to achieve a piece of that God's, the power of 6 pages power, thanks to the power I built into you. And then he says, do not misunderstand, this is not power of your creation. So my interpretation of, it's also important to note that Madara looks down and sees his fucking Hashirama face in his chest and says, that's why I can see what's coming so well. So the Hashirama face in him isn't just increasing his stats, it's actually apparently increasing his sensory, right? So that's important to note, that it's a buff in many different ways. So this is a bit of a back and forth. It's a bit confusing. My reading of this is that Kabuto thinks, based on his research and his knowledge, that he has restored Madara to essentially the way that he was when he was in his prime, and then given him a bit of a boost as well. So he is stronger than he was when he was alive previously. Madara then says, I don't know about that. And then Kabuto says, well, you're proving my theory right. And then Madara says, wait, no, this isn't you don't get credit for this. So it's a bit ambiguous, but I think that Madara is at least relative to his alive self. But when you put together all of the additional shit that he's got, like he's got regeneration, we went over all this before, and the Hashirama cells, and the Rinnegan, and he's got access to wood style and deep forest emergence with the pollen and all that shit, right? Like, Madara just has more stacked advantages on him now that make him more effective in combat overall. It's like impossible to quantify exactly how much he was like reverse age youth debuff fixed whatever by Kabuto's machinations, but based on the context of their conversation and based on all of the other peripheral benefits he gets while in this state, I think he is stronger than his alive self. I think we have to remember the Rinnegan aren't just fancy eyes, right? He has access to summoning the Ghetto statue with the white dragon in it. He has access to, Shinra Tensei, Bancho Tenin, Chibaku Tensei. He can rip people's souls out. He can read their minds. All of the shit that the Six Paths of Pain can do, he can do now. He doesn't choose to do so all that often, but he does use the Pretapath absorption, right? Here he's just faking. He's trying to psych them out, but later on he does absorb other shit. He absorbs Naruto's Rasen Shuriken. So he has a lot more going for him now as an Edo Tensei with the fucking Hashirama face and the Rinnegan than he did when he was alive. So I personally think that Edo Tensei Madara is stronger than, but relative to, Edo Tensei Hashirama. I think that that is debatable, but I think that there is a strong case to be made for this version of Madara being stronger than this version of Hashirama. I also think that this version of Madara is stronger than a live Hashirama. That is my opinion. It is harder to substantiate in the context of a debate because there's all of these fucking variables about Edo Tensei that get introduced, and I don't feel like I could argue that in good faith in a debate because there's so much shit that we don't exactly know. My personal reading of it, I think it's a fair interpretation from a literary analysis standpoint, whatever you want to call it, is that Edo Tensei Madara is stronger than a live Hashirama overall because of all the shit that he's got. But I don't think I can prove that. That's just my take on it, right? So let me check chat real quick. I saw a message came in and then we'll get back to it. Let's see. Oh, Dr. Strangle, hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. Thank you for stopping by. Dr. Strangle says it's actually insane how toxic the Naruto community is when a bi guy can't even help but be discriminated against. Like, it's a 2% milk of Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, to be honest, like, I don't want to get too personal here, but, like, it's not like I'm even that, like, like talking about it all the time or anything like that. Like, I don't think I'm very obnoxious about it. It's just, like, part of who I am, and it's weird that it's so triggering to some people. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, it's weirdly toxic. I think Naruto is extremely gay. Like, let's just be clear. Like, most of the major relationships in the story are between like men who are obsessed with each other and only care about each other and nothing else and only have eyes for each other and just want to be with each other. It's like really gay in a good way, right? Like, there is genuine love and affection and also like, I don't know what you would call it, like connection between men that like only understand each other and nobody else gets them. Now, of course, this is me projecting my own opinion, right? Like, you could say that it is a tale of very, very tender and nice and important and genuine platonic male friendship, and that would not be an incorrect reading. But I think there is also a reading of Naruto as being, as Sybil puts it, and let's go to this video because I feel like I should recommend this every stream because it's one of my favorite Naruto videos. This video over here, right? This content creator Sybil here makes an excellent understanding or excellent argument in favor of there being a valid queer reading of Naruto, and basically like the relationships between characters like Madara and Hashirama and Naruto and Sasuke being relationships of genuine love. Now, it's not like the kind of spicy sort of very explicit love that you might expect to see on certain like fan blogs or whatever, but it is a kind of love. And so I don't know, it's weird. It's a story about men who love other men and what that love does to them, and the fact that like so many people within the within the community happen to be huge fans of that story and then also homophobic is like really weird. I think some people need a little help getting out of the closet. I'll just just leave it there. Sorry says waiting for the day John reads peak manga France sensation Saints. Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Saint Seiya. That's not a joke. In France, everybody loves Saint Seiya and Astro Boy. I enjoy Saint Seiya's Saintia show more than the OG, honestly. Okay, I'll be curious to check it out. Genuinely, Kuromada quick with Saint Seiya. He makes Tolkien look like a war. God damn. Okay, all right. That's I like that. The fire inherent to that claim. Also, I see that Shinigami said 69, and apparently YouTube didn't like that, so it's not showing up in the YouTube window. Oh wait, no, there it is. Okay, I was in the wrong window. Let's see. The statement is from How About No. Let's see. To English, please. Figure we should just like hear it out phonetically. This time we have been reincarnated into this world with powers close to our original capabilities. Yeah, that sounds like it's pretty accurate. Let's hear what this says. This might be kind of loud, so just a heads up. 3, 2, 1. Cool. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I feel bad that I don't like always know how to, or like pretty much never know how to say all the text that you've written out. I recognize some of the characters, but obviously I don't feel like I should try to read it all out, right? Oh yeah, and then I see sorry about the blog. Yeah, it seems like you figured things out. Certain B says there's a translation for the Tobirama statement that says it's closer to the real power instead of close. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I appreciate the clarification there. Honestly, Naruto will never beat the gay allegations, and I'm totally fine with that. Okay, so going back into the Hashirama stuff, I do think that Edo Tensei Madara overall has an advantage over Edo Tensei Hashirama, but they are basically relative to one another, right? They're clearly capable of clashing with one another. They're capable of perceiving each other's attacks. I do think it's notable that Hashirama, like at this point, says, "Hey, it's really important for me to go to Jubito. Jubito's fucking things up. I need to stop him." Madara gets in his way and Hashirama's not able to get around him, right? So at the very least, Hashirama, if he is still stronger than Madara, he's not stronger than him by an extent that enables him to blitz him or to defeat him or to turn him off or anything like that. He is basically just cornered by Madara or intercepted by Madara, and he doesn't have a response to that, right? He has to fight him, he has to beat him, and Madara manages to keep up with him, right? And they're both like, hey, there's no reason for them to not hold back here because they're both Edo Tensei. So even if Hashirama has misgivings about fighting his friend and he are both already dead and they have regeneration. So like Hashirama could just like smack the shit out of him, disintegrate him, and then run and deal with Jubito while Madara regenerates, and then still be able to hang out with him later, right? I don't think there's any argument that Hashirama is holding back here. So this version of Hashirama, even if he is somehow, there's an argument that he's like stronger than Madara, it's not by any appreciable amount whereby he's able to actually get around him. I think it's also worth noting the following, that Madara and Hashirama, at one point, in the fight, this is around page chapter 647 and 646, Obito starts getting the Imminent Tsukuyomi ready, and there's this interesting moment here where Madara has his Susanoo active, and then presumably Hashirama has his Sage mode on, but Hashirama then shows up without the Sage mode, and Madara, shows up with, he loses his Susanoo. My interpretation of what's happening here is that the god tree is sucking up the chakra from the surroundings, and that includes sucking up the Sage mode and the Susanoo chakra. So basically, they both go into base, right? They fight each other in base. They display some relativity, but Madara does manage to, turn Hashirama into a hedgehog with the chakra rods. He sticks Hashirama full of his chakra rods during the course of this fight. Hashirama obviously looks pretty stressed out. He's not he's taking this seriously. He's respecting Madara's strength here. So I still have, in their base Edo Tensei forms, I think that Madara is clearly strongly pressuring Hashirama, which implies that he is at least as strong as him, if not stronger. Flashing forward to page 656, or chapter 656, page 02, right? Hashirama seems to have Madara dead to rights. He seems to have won. And he seems to say like, hey, I now have you constrained to the point where you won't be able to move. But then this happens, right? Like, Hashirama himself, as though he's an Edo Tensei, he's like fucking panting, right? Despite the fact that he has infinitely regenerating stamina and all that, he's consumed enough of that stamina that he is fucking exhausted. Hashirama, the king of like self regeneration, sage mode, and everything like that, he is panting, right? Madara, on the other hand, is just kind of chilling. He looks like he's been defeated. Naruto shows up and throws this massive, like, enormous fucking Rasen Shuriken directly at him, and it doesn't do anything to him. Like, he's just kind of fine, right? I don't think we actually see what happens at the point of the explosion, but basically, like, I think the Rasen Shuriken winds up destroying destroying the wood dragon, and then Madara survives it, and then Hashirama throws down Gracious Deity Gates on top of him, and he says that he's immobilized. Madara doesn't really look all that bothered by this. This is chapter 656, page 008. He's like fine, right? He doesn't actually look upset. And then he says, I'll be going on the attack now, and then immediately like breaks out of the gates and like starts going after them, right? So this is 656:015, right? He says, quit the tough guy act, but it's not the tough guy act. Like, he manages to get out of these deity gates. So I think that in base, at the very least, that Madara is stronger than Hashirama, because like Hashirama fighting alongside Naruto, Madara is like, yeah, fuck you. Like, he gets out of the restraints. He like negs the Rasen Shuriken. It doesn't bother him at all, and he despite fighting these, like, both of them, manages to turn around and get out of it and turn the tide of the battle. So after that, he makes what's his name, Obito, resurrect him, and that's where things start to get a little bit messy. But we have to first go talk about Jubito and Obito and the Ten Tails before the Madara scaling makes sense. So to briefly recap, I think as alive characters, Valley of the End, Hashirama is like, there's a very strong argument that he's stronger. So I'm going to say he's stronger. I think as Edo Tensei in base, Madara is stronger. I think that as Edo Tensei in like powered up with Susanoo versus Sage Mode, I think that Madara is stronger, but they're relative and it's more ambiguous and harder to prove. In the meantime, I think that this is one part of this video that I haven't done as much research for, so feel free to dispute it if you disagree. I think that Madara and hence Hashirama are both over White Mask Obito. Obito himself can only handle one of the Rinnegan. Obito fights like Naruto and Bee and Kakashi and Guy, but he does so with the assistance of 6 other Edo Tensei. Granted, he's controlling their modulating at the very least the amount of Biju chakra that's coming out of the Geto statue, and like he's controlling the Biju and telling them what to do and shit like that. But at the same time, like, he has a lot of support with him. When Madara shows up, he's able to fight those same characters without, like, one-on-one, and do at least as well as they do without having the Edo Tensei as a support. Now, granted, you could say, okay, well, he's got Obito as a support, so it's kind of hard to prove, at least until I do more research. But my take on it is that, narratively speaking, and just in terms of the feats that we see over the course of that fight overall, I don't think most people will struggle with the idea, or like balk at the idea that Madara is at least relative to Obito. Like, they should be on par at the very least. I think Madara overall is stronger than Obito. I don't think that should be too controversial, but I would invite people to argue with it if you think that I've missed something. Now, with that being said, White Mask Obito, what else did I say about him? Oh, he has Kamui, which Madara doesn't have, and that could be an asset. That could maybe cinch him the fight if the two of them were to fight. Not sure if that's the case, but it is something worth acknowledging. He can also enhance jutsu like Bomb Blast Dance to make some of the attacks like you could probably argue that Bomb Blast Dance is better than Great Fire Annihilation because it's basically just like a big ass fireball, but Obito's incorporates this vortex of Kamui, and it might kind of similar to like the Kamui Shuriken that Kakashi uses. Maybe having access to that means that he has some advantage over Madara, maybe. However, he doesn't have Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, so, I think the implication is that, like, he's not going to go blind because Hashirama's cells prevent him from doing so. He might go blind, but that's kind of up in the air. He doesn't have a perfect Susanoo. Madara does. When you look at the feats of Madara, like cutting through all of the fucking like mountains in EMS with like a swing of his Susanoo, I don't think that Obito at least has DC feats that are comparable. I think we could probably agree that Obito is below Madara. Now, this is important because when the oh, you said Madara only boasts. Sorry, how about No says Madara only bursts out of the DD gates once Obito actually revives him. Okay, so when he's an Edo Tensei, then he doesn't have the strength. You could argue that he doesn't have the strength to break them, and then that would be part of him, like that actually makes sense narratively. I think that like he regains his strength as an alive individual, and that's what helps him clear it, and that kind of reinforces the fact that he's getting stronger when he's alive. That could make a lot of sense actually. So then I think it's important to mention the way in which like Hashirama and the Edo Tensei or the other Edo Hokage engage with the Ten Tails, right? So looking at page at chapter 632, page 007, or actually this is a little out of order, sorry. Should be going from left to right here. So when Hashirama and the other Hokage show up, right, they imprison the fucking Ten Tails within two different forms of sealing, essentially. One is the Crimson Formation, 4 Crimson Ray Formation, which is the gate around there. Now, I can try to find it. I don't know if I have the scans here, but basically, like, there's that moment where Hashirama and Tobirama both make clones. Oh yeah, here we go. Like inside the Crimson Ray Formation, and they both indicate that like the Crimson Ray Formation is limiting their jutsu. It's like it's suppressing their chakra. They're not able to bring forth their normal jutsu strength while inside the barrier, right? So it seems to me, at least, unless I'm missing something, that the red barrier is actually suppressing the Ten Tails itself overall. It's not just preventing it from leaving the area. And then the deity gates are also like slamming down and holding the Ten Tails in place. So let's note for a moment, like we mentioned last time, that Hashirama and the rest of them don't immediately go in and kill the Ten Tails. They don't snipe it. Hashirama doesn't solo it. He doesn't put it to sleep. He sets up this joint attack with everybody else, but it's still not enough to kill the Ten Tails itself. In fact, Hashirama himself over here, page 631, or page 14, chapter 631, says, "It does please me to see you so infatuated with becoming Hokage," referring to these two over here, "but can you speed it up? Charge your chakra. We'll take down Ten Tails with an all-out attack." Oh, sorry, I just saw your message. Yeah, please be safe. Please be safe. Thank you for stopping by, but of course, like, take care, and good luck with everything. So they, Hashirama seems to indicate here, and this is like Hashirama himself talking, right? This is, you can see the sage mode markings on his face, that he himself is not going to try to go fuck with the Ten Tails himself. He wants everybody to charge up an attack and do it, right? I think the clear implication here is that the Ten Tails, at the very least, you know, there isn't any strong evidence indicating that Hashirama is one-shotting this fucking thing. The implication seems to be that maybe you could say he's just playing it safe, but it seems to me that like Hashirama needs support to like finalize the fight with this character. At the very least, the way that he interacts with the Ten Tails is with the support of other people, right? So that being said, let's see what else I say here. Madara and Obito can plug him. Oh yeah, there's a couple of ambiguities, like Madara and Obito like plug into the Ten Tails. I don't know if that makes it stronger. I'd have to go review that. But yeah, we have the statement also from Gyuki that when the Ten Tails is in this form, he's just throwing his power around. He hasn't consolidated it yet. So when Obito absorbs him, he gets stronger. When Obito stabilizes, he gets stronger, right? So this character right here, the Ten Tails, that all of the Edo Hokage were collaborating on. Granted, Hashirama split up some of his chakra, like he sent one clone to deal with Madara at first, but all his other clones, at least at first, were contributing to this. The other Edo Hokage, Naruto and Sasuke and all that, Sakura are there. They're all, like, Gyuki, I think, is there too, right? Or maybe Gyuki's fighting elsewhere, I forget. But they're all contributing their chakra and focusing their energy on this one character. They don't manage to kill it in time. That character then gets absorbed into Unstable Jubito. So Unstable Jubito, like when he spawns in, so to speak, he kind of does the same thing that I think How About No was talking about Madara doing, where he just shrugs off the deity gates that are on him, right? So, like, it's important to note also that the deity gates on the 10 tails are spread out. Like, there's one on each of the individual tails, and then Hashirama puts one on his head. But for Obito, when he becomes Jubito, Hashirama stacks them all on to Obito himself. And like even Tobirama here says the sage art seal that had even suppressed 10 tails, right? And it's all stacked, it's all consolidated in one place. And Obito just says, like, actually, fuck that, I don't care. We have this response from Hashirama. By the way, this is 638. This is 638 as well. Hashirama says, this is bad. Okay, just putting all these individual pieces of evidence together. Hinata looks at this happen, and she has her Byakugan active, and just so we're totally clear, she says, all of Ten Tails was completely absorbed into that man, it's Chakra 2. So this thing over here, which has all these feats, is now part of Obito, increasing Obito's strength. And then we talked about this before. Yeah, here's the statement from Gyuki on from 638 about him throwing its power around. And then he does this. He like grabs the fucking Crimson Ray formation and just shreds it like instantly, right? Hyperbole, obviously, but like he just grabs it with his arms and just tears it apart. And this is the barrier not only that Hashirama made, but it was Hashirama plus the other Hokage, right? And this is unstable Jubito at this point. And then we have this statement, Jubito is stronger than me. Hopefully I have made this statement, like I've argued my case for why I think this is Hashirama himself saying that it's it's stronger than Hashirama, not just stronger than the clone. I think I've proven that, or at least made a strong argument for that, so hopefully we can move on. Other things to note, I think I kind of went over this. This character, like the cons of this character, like the cons of Unstable Jubito, obviously are that he is feral. He's like kind of writhing around. He's in his like weird, gross snake form sometimes. He doesn't really know how to harness his power at first. He doesn't have access to like the staff and the floating Gudodama. He just has like the two smaller individual ones that he uses in his hands or whatever. So when Jubito goes from being unstable to stable, he gains more abilities, right? He gains the ability of flight. His stats go up. He is better able to harness and control the chakra. He's thinking like an actual person, so he can think tactically, strategically. He gets the rods and the Gudodama. He gets, well, technically he has it here too, but he's also invulnerable to non-senjutsu jutsu. He gets access to stuff like the Sword of Nunoboku. He also, or Nunoboko, excuse me. He also like does this thing where he puts his hands on the ground and causes the god tree to like erupt from the ground and grow, which might be the most impressive like wood style feat that we see in the series, just in terms of like how massive the thing is and how quickly it grows and all that. So this Jubito, obviously way stronger than Unstable Jubito, obviously way stronger than he was when he himself was alive. And all of that is just to say that these same bonuses, these buffs, these abilities would apply to Madara too when he becomes the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Okay, so going back to Madara, we now have this version of Madara who has just been resurrected. We have statements that like from Hashirama saying he must not be allowed to fully return to life, indicating that if he does return to life, his strength, his level of threat is going to go up. He's going to be worth like more of a form to contend with. Here's the thing that How About No was talking about. This is in 656, page 07 or page 17. Madara just kind of like focuses and breaks off the gates. So even if you don't think he was as strong as Hashirama before, now he gains this ability and now he's able to just shrug off his like total immobilizing ceiling. You might have also seen like this thing over here. This is Sai's ability. So like Sai is about to seal him, so he breaks off of that too. I mean, like obviously I don't think Sai is all that relevant compared to Hashirama, but it is something that's worth noting. This blind Madara also, as you can see from the Sage mode over here, not only gets access to, has the Hashirama cells from before, but now he takes Sage mode from Hashirama, and he has access to, like, Hashirama Sage mode, probably the best Sage mode that we see in the series. And he initially, when he goes up against the Biju, against Shukaku and all that, gets wounded. But he specifically says, like, um, I am, not yet fighting with refinement, because he's like basically, well, I can heal myself anyway, so I don't have to be as cautious. And then he like immediately heals himself. He's got all that shrapnel in him from Shukaku's like sand bullet, whatever the sand buckshot. But he just like pushes the bullets out, dissolves them, whatever he does, and he heals himself and he gets right back into the fray. Okay, so that resurrected No Eyes Madara, I think, is stronger than his Edo Tensei self. I think that's a clear implication. Obviously, he loses the Rinnegan, he becomes blind, so that's a debuff. But at the same time, he does manage to get actually he doesn't have the limbo there yet. It seems like he's getting vitality back, he's getting strength back overall. So at this point, it seems pretty clear that at base, right, the way that Hashirama has been resurrected now, he is back to his normal self, like he was when he was alive, like what Kabuto was trying to do. He is at a baseline, like at the foundation, he is back to the way that he was when he was alive at the Valley of the End. But now, in addition to that, he's got Hashirama cells, and he's got, well, he loses the Rinnegan temporarily, but he then has Hashirama's Sage Mode. And then he keeps on getting stronger from there. So when he gets his one eye, like the one Rinnegan back, right, he said he gains access to the single limbo, which already, if he's going up against Hashirama shouldn't be able to detect that, right? The limbo is only detectable by characters who have some sort of Sage of Six Paths sensory. I don't think there's an argument for Hashirama being able to detect that at all. So already that's a massive advantage if the two of them were going to fight, for example. Although maybe there's an edge case I haven't thought of, right? Madara in chapter 659 also says, now things start getting a little fun, which indicates to me that like he's acknowledging that having the single Rinnegan is a boost. Like, why wouldn't it be anyway, right? He's gaining his vision back, and he's also gaining, like Obito gets a massive buff when he incorporates one Rinnegan, so Madara is doing so as well. And so he should have access to the Rinnegan abilities, at least some of them, back now. I think the only thing that he can't do is like use the full force of the, like, all four limbo clones or whatever, right? He does say on page 661, that's about all I can expect with my current strength. So that's acknowledging that he's not even at full power yet, because he hasn't gotten the second Rinnegan, and he hasn't unlocked the full potential of the Rinnegan. And then I think there's some more statements about like how bad things are going to be if he does eventually fucking, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, he's just gonna keep getting stronger from that. So he goes from being like resurrected one eye Rinnegan Madara to then absorbing the Ten Tails. When he absorbs the Ten Tails, he should have all of the benefits that Obito does too, including the massive chakra pool. Now, as long as we agree here that Madara is at least relative to Obito, then like at this part in the chain, then basically Madara keeps getting stronger on his own, and then from here he gets this comparable buff and then shoots up even further, right? So like at the very least he should be as strong as Obito in base, but then he's also got like Hashirama cells and Sage Mode, so he should be even stronger than unstable Jubito, and probably stronger than stable Jubito as well, especially since, compare, like we mentioned before, compare the way that Madara absorbs the Ten Tails chakra and becomes, and like how readily, how easily, how smoothly he assumes this new form. Compare that to how Obito has to like actively fight to retain his consciousness and shit like that. Madara, to me, narratively is implied to clearly have like more power, more control, and just be more talented than Obito. And he steps into this new role much more readily and more naturally, right? So he immediately stabilizes. He gets all of Obito's Jubi benefits. He's able to survive having his right side blasted away by Guy later on, and then immediately after that, getting tagged by Naruto's I think it's Lava Rasen Shuriken or Magnet Rasen Shuriken, whatever it is. We'll look at that in a second. And then he's got like these larger statements which we'll take a look at. But yeah, hopefully nobody here is going to like be too skeptical about the idea that like Sage of Six or like One Eye Rinnegan Madara is at least relative to unstable Jubito, if not like even stronger than stable Jubito. Let's look at a couple of other like respect pieces of evidence over here. Let's see. So Minato says, I sense sage power and even stronger than what Obito possessed. Obito doesn't possess sage power until he becomes like the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. So this is Minato hinting that Madara is stronger, like he has more sage power than Obito did. I think that's a piece of evidence in favor of Madara being stronger than Jubito. Let's see. He says, I possess the strongest chakra. I mean, like, granted, that's him talking. He could be glazing himself, but it is one piece of evidence. It might be, like, not worth accepting at face value, but it is a statement to consider. Let's see. Hagoromo says that Madara's become just like Mother. Now no longer Indra's reincarnate. He has obtained Ten Tails powers and getting close to me. Okay, that's not definitive or whatever, but it does like indicate, you know, he is on like nearly at Sage of Six Paths level, like this legendary mythical figure. Now this is interesting, I think, because when Guy, so this by the way is in chapter 672, when Guy enters the Night Guy and does his flow thing or whatever, like the Yagai over here, Madara himself says, I'll acknowledge it, of all those who have fought me over the years, there's no one who surpasses you at taijutsu. Now again, like thinking back to that statement about Obito saying that Madara was at the top of the shinobi world, you could look at this and be like, okay, well, Guy, this just means that nobody else surpasses Guy at taijutsu, so maybe he's on par with Hashirama, in which case Hashirama could do this too. Another interpretation which I side towards, or like I lean towards rather, is the idea that like Madara has never seen anybody as good as Guy at taijutsu. Guy's taijutsu is better than Hashirama's taijutsu, I think, is what Madara is saying here. Now granted, you could dispute that, right? You don't have to believe that at face value, but that's my take. I think what he is saying here is that of all of the people that he's fought over the years, that Guy is the best at taijutsu. But you could technically like fairly interpret that as like no one else surpassed him, so technically he might have seen other people like Hashirama who were equal to him. I don't know, it's up for debate, I guess. Just something to consider. And of course over here, 672, right, like Madara has just taken this massive blast where he loses part of his like chest cavity and arm and stuff. He says he almost dies, but he's not dead. He resurrects, he survives, or like he regenerates, he survives this. Right after that, Naruto shows up, kicks away his Gudodama. This is Sage of Six Paths mode Naruto, right? Punches him, cracks the God Tree. Madara acknowledges that Naruto is stronger now. Then Naruto does this, which is insane. He creates a lava Rasen Shuriken, which is powerful enough to cut the entire fucking God Tree in half, like in one hit. We know how fucking massive this thing is, right? It like towers above the battlefield. Madara has just taken a hit from Night Guy, who he says is like at the very least tied with the strongest person who's ever he's ever seen use taijutsu. Then Sage of Six Paths Naruto punches him while he's down, and then hits him with his attack that cuts through the God Tree, right? So Madara, despite that fact, survives it, right? And he keeps on fighting after that. So you want to talk about durability and survivability and regenerative abilities. I think like Madara has kind of made up for his you know, perhaps inferiority to Hashirama's regenerative capabilities at this point. And it gets better because, of course, like when Madara gets the Sharingan from Kakashi, he's able to like use Kamui as well as like hover in midair as a bisected person. Like getting chopped the fuck in half doesn't stop him either. So he's capable of regenerating from like near death attacks. He's capable of tanking something that is like or at least surviving something that cuts the God Tree in half while still from a Sage of Six Paths enhanced character, while still recovering from like probably the strongest taijutsu he's ever seen. And then he just keeps on fucking with people. he just like, he's like, okay, well, fuck this. He steals Kakashi's eye, which gives him Kamui, by the way. He has Kamui for a little while. And then he's able to fucking, you know, just hang out and have a casual conversation while only being a torso. So I think whatever going from where's the Hashirama respect thread? Right over here, like going from having been taken down by a sword, this is what kills him before. He gets stabbed with a sword. Okay? This is what he was like when he was relative to Hashirama, back when they were alive. Now he fucking is doing this. So I think he's probably on a uh, slightly different level than he was before. Now, that being said, I got ahead of myself a little bit because um, Madara does also get the Sharingan, so technically there's an intermediary step between like intermediary form between One Eye Rinnegan Jubidara and like the full Rinnegan Jubidara, which is this like half Rinne Sharingan Jubidara, but he's only on panel for like a couple of chapters, if that. He didn't really do a whole lot. But technically speaking, there is a form of Jubidara that has Kamui, which is kind of insane to think about. So remember when I was saying, like, well, maybe Jubito or like Obito has an advantage over Hashirama or Madara? Maybe you could argue that based on the Kamui. Well, now this form of Madara has the Kamui too. So, like, I don't know. I think that making an argument that Hashirama is stronger than this form is really, 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 really sketchy. That being said, Madara then gets his second Rinnegan. He does this, right? So this is the God Tree, and this is the Chibaku Tensei that Madara uses. I don't really think that you can make an argument that Hashirama has DC or AP feats that are on this level. Um, Granted, that's not a guarantee that this is going to kill Hashirama per se, but at least in terms of power output, I would invite anybody to challenge me on this and like bring a calc to bear. I don't think that you're arguing just based on strength alone, like raw strength, physical strength, chakra strength, ninjutsu strength, whatever. Like, look at this shit. Look at how big they are compared to the fucking God Tree, and tell me that Hashirama is actually stronger than this. Personally, I'm not seeing it. Also, note the fact that, like, Madara does this casually while hovering in the air. Yeah, but, like, just to reiterate, he can fly. And he's, like, he has access to the Gurodama, which, like, disintegrate people and shit like that. And he's doing this. Okay. So when he gets his dual Rinnegan mode, he loses Kamui, but then we have a statement from Obito saying that if he like gains the second Rinnegan, terrible things will happen. So it's very clear that he's getting stronger. Oh yeah, and by the way, Hashirama is still around at this point, so that's just worth noting for like the overall context. Like he is still alive. Sasuke is able to go and like touch the rods or whatever because he like gets chakra from Tobirama. So it's possible that like if they genuinely thought Hashirama was stronger than anybody else there, they could go free him from the rods and like bring him into the fight. They don't do that. Just worth mentioning. He fights like with Naruto and Sasuke, blah blah blah. Okay, then he awakens his third eye, and when he awakens his third eye, there's a couple of things that happen that are worth noting. One is that he absorbs the entirety of the fucking God Tree into himself. Like, I skipped that panel. I can go look it up if you want, but like right after this, Madara is looking up at the God Tree. It might actually be over here in the respect thread. Let's see. Is it? Nah. I have to go. There's a very small disrespect section over there. Yeah, basically, like, Madara looks up at the God Tree. Kaguya is like, hey, take me into you. Let's just look at it right now so you have the context for it, right? So, like, 673. And then we're almost done. I can go back to chat in a second. So, 673. Okay, so, right. Cuts through the God Tree. Madara looks up. Kaguya says, take the divine tree, 10 tails, all of me into you. Master Guy's over there, blah, blah, blah. So Madara, like, this massive tree, which is, like, replete with life force, it's already been sucking the life and the chakra out of people. He brings it into himself. So any residual life force, any chakra, any energy that was in that tree is now inside of him as well. So I'm pretty sure that's a buff. Sasuke is here. We see him actually removing the rods from Tobirama, so he could go do that to Hashirama as well if they really thought that he was going to be that big of an asset in the fight. I don't think there's any other statements about the nature of the tree. Blah, blah, blah. I'm completely immortal, etc. And then they say, okay, we will take you down. Okay. Besides that, I think we're getting to the end of the feats that I wanted to point out. Some people have pointed out that when Madara triggers the God Tree to spread across the world, which is like his doing, that might be one of the few examples of planetary force. I haven't like looked at the calc in great detail myself. I think Dr. Strangle came up with this, or like Dr. Strangle, you definitely mentioned it to me in the past, but like there's a calc that people have done that takes into account the amount of force it would, or like I think the amount of energy that would need to go into the tree to make it grow that fast to be able to like spread across the entire world and push everything out of the way and stuff like that. And they calc that to planetary. Again, I'm not like a big calc guy. I'm not gonna draw a line in the sand or like die on that hill, so to speak. But that being said, oh, hang on. Certain B says the Shinju has a chakra of Madara and Sage Hashirama because it. Oh, that's right. That's right. Because like from that panel we were talking about before, where like the fucking Susanoo gets ripped off and Sage mode. So yeah. So at the very least, the Shinju would have that as well as any other chakra that got like absorbed from Shinobi. So that's got to be a buff, right? At the very least, it's increasing Madara's like chakra reserves, if not making him more powerful. I guess you could say. But that makes a lot of sense. He's probably also getting like more Senjutsu chakra as well. If that follows the same rules of like Obito or Kabuto absorbing Senjutsu from other people too, like from Orochimaru's seal or whatever. So that being said, like then Madara does this thing that you'll probably be familiar with called the Infinite Tsukuyomi. I don't know how alive Hashirama is dealing with Infinite Tsukuyomi, right? Like, even if at this point you really do genuinely think that Hashirama has other abilities that make him stronger than Madara. We haven't even talked about Madara's Genjutsu. We haven't really focused on stuff like ripping out people's souls and stuff like that with the various Rinne abilities. This is goofy. I don't think this would matter at all. But we also haven't talked about him like summoning Pain's like Cerberus dog and shit like that. Like I don't think he would in character. But technically speaking, he has access to all of the Animal Path summons, right? So I mean, again, not really relevant, but it is kind of funny to think about him like dropping the fucking panda on Hashirama in retaliation for the deity gates or something to keep him in place. But yeah, he has the Infinite Tsukuyomi. I don't know how the fuck Hashirama would deal with the Infinite Tsukuyomi. So if we're considering overall strength to be determined at least in part by your overall ability set, your holistic like combat kit, then yeah, pretty sure that this would be a win con for Madara over Hashirama here. And then we have our final bit of scaling. So obviously when what's his name, Madara transitions into becoming Kaguya, maybe that's a poor choice of words there, but when he like transforms into Kaguya, right, his body can't handle the chakra and he gets ripped apart, right? Sasuke has this statement in chapter, oh, I don't have the chapter on this one, that's weird. It's just image. Well, this got to be chapter like 680, 679, something like that, when Kaguya first shows up. And Sasuke says his chakra is far greater than Madara's. Okay, so like fucking Kaguya is stronger than Madara. I don't think a lot of people are gonna argue with that, right? That being said, I said trans Madara. I was wondering how that would be received. But anyway, yes, canonically trans Madara is now Kaguya, and now I just wanted to throw a couple of pieces of evidence down to show that Sage of Six Paths Naruto is relative to Kaguya in some respects. Now, obviously, he can't beat her because she'll keep like regenerating and shit. Like the whole point of this fight is that he and Sasuke, who are opposing forces, need to combine their ability to seal Kaguya. They're not going to be able to punch her to death. They need to seal her, right? That just to be very clear, I don't think Naruto is going to beat Kaguya in a fight. However, he is relative to her, and that he's able to match her barrage of punches from Vacuum Fist or whatever, although he does get pushed back eventually. He is able to break out of her nature merge situation there and fight her with the clones, and he's also able to blitz her after Obito dies and like rip her arm off. I do think this is a blitz because she seems surprised by the fact that like it even happened, right? So Sage of Six Paths Naruto has anti-Kaguya feats, and he is a shinobi, so he's stronger than that. He's strong enough to at least like harm Kaguya, right? Same thing for DMS Obito fused with Kakashi, right? Like you could argue that this is technically two shinobi, right? Because it's Obito's chakra in Kakashi, or you could argue that it's Kakashi enhanced by Obito. Whatever you want to call this form is also capable of ripping apart Kaguya's limbs when she's in this unstable like Jubi ball situation, as well as piercing directly through her with the Kamui lightning, like Kamui Raikiri as well, right? So to review all that, here is my scaling chain for why Hashirama is not the strongest shinobi, period. DMS Obitashi or Kabitobito or whatever, Kakobito, and Sage of Six Paths Naruto are relative in some respects to Kaguya. Kaguya is way the fuck stronger, like impossibly stronger, according to like disbelief inducing stronger than like peak Madara. Peak Madara has infinite Tsukuyomi. He has probably the best like wood manipulation feat in the series, with causing the god tree to grow all over the place and being able to absorb people. And he can absorb chakra from it. He is stronger than well, actually, this is Third Eye Rinnegan Madara, right? Okay, so Third Eye Rinnegan Madara is stronger than Dual Rinnegan Madara. Dual Rinnegan Madara is stronger than half Rinnegan, half Sharingan Jubidara. Half Rinnegan, half Sharingan Jubidara is stronger than one Rinnegan Jubidara. One Rinnegan Jubidara is stronger than Resurrected one Rinnegan Madara. Resurrected one Rinnegan Madara is stronger than Resurrected No Eyes Madara. Resurrected No Eyes Madara is stronger than Edo Tensei Madara. Edo Tensei Madara is relative to Hashirama. Hashirama himself is probably over White Mask Obito, but maybe you can argue that they're relative. That being said, when Obito absorbs the Ten Tails is a character that requires Hashirama plus other characters to collaborate to defeat. All that energy goes into Obito. He then stabilizes, or he goes into Obito. Hashirama says, this guy's stronger than me. Then he stabilizes, gets more abilities, gets more weapons, etc. And then that shit goes into Madara. So Hashirama is the strongest at the Valley of the End. He is maybe the strongest, but probably not the strongest as an Edo Tensei, and then after that it's curtains, right? Like, basically, certainly by the time we get to one Rinnegan Jubidara, anybody that scales to him, which granted is very few people, is stronger than Hashirama. Sage of Six Paths Naruto is stronger than Hashirama. DMS Obitashi is arguably stronger than Hashirama, and various like fucking 5 or 6 forms of Madara are stronger than Hashirama as well. So that's it. That's my main argumentation. So basically, now we're in a position here where we have two options. If you want to know whether or not Hashirama is the strongest shinobi, you can either look at one databook statement and take this one sentence over here from this databook statement, or you can take all this. Now, the funny thing is that if we had never read this, right, never like come across this data book, I don't think there's any evidence in the series beyond like the very clear evidence of like alive versions of these characters. There's nothing really in here that points to Hashirama being the strongest after a certain point, right? There are counter arguments to the idea that other characters are stronger. You can counter this statement by calling into question whether or not it's the clone talking. But where is the actual positive, proactive evidence, like the actual forward evidence from the main series itself, from the manga? Where is the evidence actually indicating that Hashirama is the strongest? I don't see it. Where is the evidence that Madara and other characters are stronger? I see a lot of it. So the conclusion that we come to then is that the databook is incorrect. Maybe there are other things in the databook which are correct, like, hey, Hashirama had unparalleled recovery ability. I don't see any problem with that. I don't see a contradiction. That seems to be supported by the manga as well. That's fine. This part is correct. This part is not. And you're only going to ever realize that and come to the conclusion about stuff like that if you look at all of the evidence together as one like cohesive whole, one cohesive body. You're not ever going to get the full picture unless you look at as much of the evidence as you possibly can. Now, that being said, let's also go to Yagai, right? To Night Guy. This should be in the 4th databook jutsu files. This is the thing that Guy used to destroy Hashirama's side, right? Like the flow thing, right? Now, of course, we've been over this before. says even Madara's right side, the strongest ninja of all, was completely destroyed. Now, in a debate against, I think it was Jay the Great, Sage argued that this doesn't count because even though the fourth data book, a official canon expository piece of text, argued that Madara is the strongest ninja of all, and this is like what's it, one-eyed Rinnegan Madara. This doesn't count because this is specifically captioning a specific moment. I don't even remember what his argument is specifically. It's like at this particular point in time, at this very specific moment where Guy uses the Night Guy ability, Madara is the strongest here in this particular area, this particular segment of the battlefield. But Hashirama is not on the battlefield at this point because he's already been suppressed. So Hashirama isn't considered for this statement because he's not present at the time that this attack happens. So Sage looks at this statement, Madara's right side, the strongest ninja of all of them, the strongest ninja of all, and says, well, this could mean of all of the ninja who are specifically in this segment of the battlefield who are actively fighting right now, therefore this doesn't count. Now, imagine that we had just changed our order of operations, like very slightly, right? Imagine that instead of starting from the statement about this one piece of evidence supporting the idea that Hashirama is the strongest, that we came across this databook statement first. We're reading through the databooks. We don't start from the character profiles, which do come before the jutsu profiles and all the databooks. Instead, we start from the jutsu profiles, and we get to this statement that says Madara is the strongest ninja of all, and then we say to ourselves the same thing. We use the same exact argument that Sage was using for Hashirama. And we say, okay, expository text, canon written by the author, intended to inform, Madara is the strongest ninja of all. What happens if we then do that? That would lead us to, we could then use the same sort of apologetics, we could use the same sort of tactics on the reverse argument and go through everything from that perspective as well and come to the same conclusion. So it's really, 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 really important that if you want to understand a manga, that you read the manga carefully. You read all of it, like all of the parts of the manga to understand it. If you're going to use a supplementary piece of material like a guide to help you understand the manga, you need to read all of that too. And then you need to put that shit together with the first shit and then put them together in the same place to look at them both of them at the same time and all the things in them, and then see where all of the evidence leads you. That will actually get you to a better understanding of the series. That will get you to a better understanding of the content. That will help you understand things better and help you share that understanding with other people better. What won't help you or anybody else is if you go with the first fucking thing you find and then fold everything else around that statement to fit it as tightly as possible. That isn't going to help you. It's not going to help anybody. It's just going to confuse the shit out of you and everybody else. And frankly, I think I mentioned last time, and not to sound condescending, but I think I mentioned last time that, like, now that I understand, now that I've heard, like, Sage in debates, like, with Jay the Great and all that, I feel like I can hear him going through this process and struggling with this. In a way, I don't think that this is his fault. I think that the way that he has trained or practiced or learned to debate is that once you identify the point that you're meant to defend or evangelize for or apologize for or whatever, then you, or apply apologetics to, I don't know what the right phrasing of that is, then what your duty is, what you're supposed to do is find a way to make that work. And the way to make this work is to say, okay, can we trust this statement? Do we have a reason to? Well, yes, here is a reason to trust it. Okay, good. Now let's go forward with that understanding and, like, let's make this work. Let's clear this point. Let's defend this house, protect this house, right? And I get that. I do. I understand the appeal of doing something like that, and I understand the value that people can be taught about a position like that. That being said, it's just kind of disheartening. It's kind of sad because I feel like maybe Sage doesn't realize that he doesn't have to do this. When you listen to the Jay the Great debate and stuff like that, like, he genuinely sounds like he's trying to figure it out. Like, he's like, I know something's wrong here. I know something doesn't quite add up. But the data book says this, and we can't doubt the data books because why? Like, what would be the implications if we doubted the data books? Where would that lead us? What would that do to us if we started questioning that? We can't. We just can't allow ourselves to do that. We can't go down that path. Therefore, we have to figure out a way to make this all work. And that to me kind of sucks. I don't know. I can't read the motherfucker's mind. I can't read anybody's mind, obviously. I don't know where this meta comes from. I don't know where this perspective comes from. It's not just Sage, it's like something that's very common in the community. At some point, we started trusting the data books in a very specific way, using them in a very specific way, and then like buttressing, building up whatever our understanding of the series around that particular understanding. And it seems to me like now, if we start to question that, we're concerned about what like the house of cards that might come falling down, or having to go back and revisit our older arguments and like re-question things. I don't know, right? There seems to be some kind of implication of like, no, we can't question this, we can't go too deep on this because X, Y, or Z. I don't fucking know why, but it's there. And you can see it hurting the people that are making the arguments themselves. You can see it causing them confusion and consternation and making their lives more difficult from my perspective. Anyway, that's part one of tonight's stream out of the way. I'm going to take a quick drink and a little snack for like 30 seconds, and then I'm going to catch up on chat real quick. So thank you for your patience. Okay. Alrighty. So, yeah. The next thing we're going to talk about is wood style. I think I'll talk briefly about like general, like other random feats for each character that I thought were interesting. And then I think we might have time to start like responding to. Actually, rather than respond to Sage video, I want to see if I can find some clips from debates that were interesting to me. I have them in my notes. I just gotta go grab them. So first, let me catch up on chat. Thank you for your patience, by the way. Shinigami says, there's also a lesbian reading in my manga that someone found, even if it'll never make it canon. That's cool. Honestly, I think that, like, the value of art and literature, like, one of the things that makes art exciting is that people can find resonance with it in their own personal, private ways. And you could make something that's just, like, you know, a very neutral, a very I'm failing at my words now, of course, when it comes time to be eloquent, but like, any given piece of art can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and people can sympathize with it and they can connect to it in a way that genuinely unlocks things for them or teaches them about things, even if that wasn't the original intention of the author. I think that it is good if authors can embrace that and encourage people to find the meaning and the passion, or like the meaning and the positivity and the emotional resonance in things, even if they didn't fully intend for that to be the case. I think that if for whatever reason, like, people come to the wrong conclusions about your art and you feel that they've egregiously misinterpreted what you were trying to say in a way that you know, defies your own ethics or morals or whatever, then that's worth addressing. But otherwise, like, why not just let people explore your art, and if it can resonate with them in different and compelling ways, that's cool. Like, you made something that a lot of different people can appreciate for different reasons, right? That's one of the powerful aspects of art that I really like. Let's see. How about No then says, I will note Naruto's like basic punch does more damage to the Kachi than Night Guy does, which is kind of crazy. I think there's a moment where like there's like a poof when Guy uses his attack where it like does, like, you do see kind of a big explosion off of it, but I forget how big it actually is. Yeah, so like there is like a big kind of explosion and like smoke and stuff like that. I think that might be comparable to what Naruto does. I don't, I'm not trying to argue with you about this. It's not that big a deal, but yeah, there are cracks here for sure. But I think that Guy probably at least makes a bigger explosion, although I don't know where exactly on the god tree um, that is to be able to calc it. Um, yeah. Let's see. Could apply the same counter. Sage applies this here to his argument about the Hashirama statement. We can say that the strongest shinobi only applies when he's alive. Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing, right? If you can find ways to use apologetics for either perspective, and to me, if like you can use the same argument to both argue for and against the same thing, that means that there's something wrong with the argument, or there's something wrong with the data that you're using to make that argument. Like it's a red flag, right? Yeah, the Madara in a sense is transitioning. Yes. Um, Shinju has a chakra. Yeah, that's a good thing you pointed out there. Certain B. Shinigami says they're enslaved to the data books. Yeah, I I want to say that I do kind of empathize with it because, like we talked about before, right? When you're debating things like this with people in a competitive context, you want to like ideally you want to have an objective source to point to for a couple of reasons. One, you want to be able to say like, hey, I can point to this source of data as like an ironclad thing that I can use to bolster my argument. But two, it's also just useful to help consolidate differences of opinion. Like if there's five different people who have five different takes on something and nobody can get anybody else to agree with anybody, and then there's just like this constant back and forth and bickering, like wouldn't it be great if we as a community can come together and just point to one of those things and be like, okay, here's the answer we were looking for. Now we can all settle down. We don't have to be angry about this anymore. There's a definitive answer from an official source. We can clear this up and move on with our lives. I think that in theory, the data books offer that promise in that they can be used to resolve disputes like that. And anytime you manage to accomplish that with a data book statement, it can feel good, right? It can be something that can be genuinely positive. But what I okay, I'm just going to be honest here. I don't know if this is like provable or whatever. This is just my opinion, right? But I think that the reality of the matter is that certain people that were prominent in the community in the early days of the Naruto like YouTube renaissance or whatever, like 8 years ago or so, started making arguments based on a cursory, not particularly curious and not particularly in-depth reading of the data books. It could have just been an honest mistake. They could have just found scans and not had access to the full data books. Naruto Versity scans, I don't know when they finished actually uploading them. I don't know if they were really known about or fully available early on. The data books were more of a precious commodity. They weren't something that everybody had access to the way that we do now. They weren't as well known. So, benefit of the doubt, I think some people made some assumptions about the data books, and those initial assumptions established a meta and established like a paradigm for the community overall a long time ago amongst prominent members of that community. Then over time, debates were had based on those statements, arguments were made, lines in the sand were drawn, content was made, money was made off of that content, and communities arose around these ideas. And so now questioning them means questioning a lot of assumptions and conclusions and arguments and stuff that have been built on them for a long time. It also means doubting the chops, so to speak, or the credentials of those people who made those foundational arguments. It means basically like needing to start over with a lot of shit, and that's a tough pill to swallow, and it can be very frustrating and discouraging, and I understand that. And I do genuinely think that that is a barrier to making the conversation move forward in a positive way. This might be arrogant of me to say, but like I don't think that the stuff that I'm saying is really all that controversial or spicy, right? Like I don't think that my takes are really that like I don't think that I've done some genius level like El Ryuzaki kind of deduction, although I appreciate the comparison, to come to this conclusions. I just read the manga and I was like, oh cool, like this guy gets stronger and then this guy gets stronger again, right? Like it's pretty simple stuff. So I have to like personally I have to feel like the reason why we're even in this boat is because we've inherited just a lot of bad info that's just gotten passed around and accepted, and it's going to take a community effort to start like correcting some of that stuff. It's not a personal thing, it's not anybody's fault. I came into the community just kind of accepting everything I was told, and then I wound up like going through a bit of a crisis of faith when I started actually researching this stuff. I get it. I really genuinely do. And yet, if we want to actually understand the stuff, that's what it's going to take. Like, we're going to need to help each other out, support each other, give each other peer review, constructive criticism, and we're going to need to uncover, like, the sins of the fathers to be dramatic about it, right? And just like work it out, right? Like, I get it. I get that it sucks. I get that it's frustrating, but it's also, it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't have to be a competitive thing where we're like having these ironclad allegiances to these stale ass like rusty ideas. We can just help each other get better. I guess. So how about No says the whole thing is so stupid. Like, one statement is obviously meant to be interpreted as at the time, yet somehow they, yeah, it's a double standard. It's just like blatantly a double standard. Personally, I think so. Certain B says the data books aren't the word of God, and even the source material is the word of God. Yeah, exactly. Like, we can apply, word of God if we want to. We can apply death of the author if we want to. We should look at everything from different angles, different perspectives, and see if we can get a better understanding together as a community. That's really all I'm advocating for. Shinigami says they might make a religion of the data books. Yeah, I have fun with these. Never judge people for it as long as they don't get weird about things. That's fine to me. The only things that I really get mad about are like when I think people are proudly and arrogantly distributing misinformation that is then harming the understanding for other people, and then making a profit off of that, while also like taking advantage of other people's hard work and then not giving them credit for that as well. Like that, all like any individual part of what I just said, as well as all of it together, just I think is like not okay. Um, Shinigami then says, "Because I would crash out." Yeah, that I've come close. Believe me. I don't actually have Discord open right now. I tend to check Discord after the debate, after the video rather, so I don't get distracted. Which part of intelligence talk I share? I'm more than happy to hear like whatever you like to share. Honestly, I'm open to hearing your thoughts. So that being said, I think let's do a quick. Let me write down a timestamp. So it's 2:38 basically. By the time I actually start talking about this, let's go over the Hashirama stuff. Not Hashirama, the Yamato stuff. So 2:38, because one of the things that I mentioned last stream in the Madara versus Hashirama stuff was that I didn't think that Kurama's presence in the fight really made that much of a difference in the Valley of the End, because it was a weapon. Like, essentially, Madara is using Kurama as a weapon. He summons him in, presumably using his Kuchiyose, and then he gives him armor, and then he like keeps him under control with his Genjutsu, Sharingan Genjutsu. So, obviously, it's sort of like, bringing a big ass, like Hashirama brings his big ass sword into battle with him, right? He has a bunch of different weapons that he brings with him. It's a tool, and that tool requires energy to use. The combat advantages that you get out of using it are obviously worth the energy investment, but it still requires a certain amount of investment from Madara. It's not like Kurama is volunteering his strength, and then that's getting added like for free on top of Madara's strength. He is utilizing it as a weapon, and that comes with a certain drawback. And then also, it sort of becomes less relevant because Hashirama, like, he has have a strength feat of grappling with Kurama and like restraining him with his wood golem, but then he doesn't like beat the shit out of Kurama and like win in a fist fight or whatever against him. Right? He puts him to sleep, and that to me is like essentially an anti-Biju hack. In my take last stream. Yes, it is a feat for Hashirama, but it's not a pure strength feat because he doesn't defeat Kurama in a straight-up brawl. He uses a Biju disable button, essentially. But there was some, I think, how about no, you might have contested it. Somebody contested it. And so I wanted to, be fair and do a little bit more research on Yamato and his use of the Biju suppressing shit, right? And also in the debate with Jay the Great, the idea of like how Yamato's like communication worked. They were talking about like Hashirama talking to his clones. Did he use the Yamanaka clan to communicate, or did they use some other methodology or something like that? So I wanted to point out a couple of things about Yamato. Here's some context about Yamato that might also inform people's understanding of Hashirama. Really quick, let's just go through this. 291. we get a statement that about Yamato from Jiraiya, who says, "You're the only one right now who's capable of controlling Naruto as host, and that necklace you're wearing, Lord Firsts, you're gonna need it. We're counting on you." So essentially, how this works, right? And this comes up again in the pain fight where Naruto breaks the necklace. Basically, Naruto has this necklace that was given to him uh, from Tsunade. The necklace itself is made of a chakra crystal, and it like resonates with Hashirama's chakra or something like that. So when Yamato goes to suppress Naruto's like Ninetales chakra that's leaking out of him, there's two things that play a role in that working. Number one is the fucking uh, like wood style, right? Is specifically the wood style technique. Kakuan's 10th Edict on Enlightenment. But also, the second part of it is that Naruto's chakra crystal around his neck resonates with Yamato's ability, right? So it's a little bit different what Yamato is doing with Naruto versus what Hashirama does with Kurama, but it's analogous, and it's worth, like, you can understand one by understanding the other. Note that when Yamato does wind up like suppressing Naruto here. This is chapter 296. This is during the Orochimaru fight, right? Yamato, like, you specifically see the chakra coming out of Naruto's like chest region where the necklace is. So, and then there's like this light coming off of it. So this, I think, is the resonance between the chakra crystal and Yamato's ability. And then he's basically like taking away the chakra and sealing it and suppressing it with the wood spike thing over here. Moving on to page, where are we? Chapter 297, page 8. Yamato says, he pacifies Naruto, but then Sakura asks if she could learn it too, and he says, "I am the only one in Konoha who can use that jutsu, and only because I carry Lord First DNA within me." There was some debate, I think, between Jay and Sage about like if Yamato is a clone. There's some conflicting evidence. How Yamato was made by Orochimaru was like he was a child, and he was like just a regular child that was born normally, and then he had a bunch of Hashirama cells put in him, and he survived. Now, fucking Kabuto later does refer to him as a clone, right? This is chapter 512. He says the first Hokage clone, known as Yamato, is always at Naruto, blah, 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 right? But technically speaking, Kabuto is not really correct. He's not... I guess it depends on what you mean by clone. If you mean by, like, contains the identical genetic information of, contains part of the genome of, or something like that, then yeah, but also, he wasn't, like, grown from scratch as a clone, right? He was infused with Hashirama cells, so in a way that you could argue that Madara is a Hashirama clone, by a similar argument, because later in the war, he's got, like, half, like, his arm is Zetsu flesh or whatever, and he's got Hashirama cells running through him. So by that same definition, Madara is like semantically a clone, but I don't think we would ever call him that, right? So the way Yamato describes himself is as a pale copy of Hashirama. Yes, I have power, but not nearly enough to forcibly suppress the Ninetales chakra. So he's not like on that level, obviously, right? And here's the explanation of the chakra crystal that responds to Hashirama's chakra. He uses to bring the Jinchuriki host under control, blah, blah, blah. It's said that the Lord first qualified to be Hokage partly because of this power. So I think that, this doesn't feel all that relevant to me based on what we learn about Hashirama later. I don't know really if he was, like, selected to be Hokage based on this. I think it had more to do with his character and reputation overall, in addition to his power. It's kind of, but, well, no, I'm kind of talking myself out of it, because he did, like, control and distribute the power of the Biju and all that stuff, right? That was a big part of how he managed to achieve a balance of power between the different villages and stuff. So yeah, I think that actually does still hold up. It wasn't retconned or anything. So something else comes up in the Jay versus Sage debate, where they're talking about, like, how does Hashirama communicate with his clones? And it's a little ambiguous. I think maybe there's stuff in the data books I haven't found about this yet. But the question is whether, like, Hashirama can communicate telepathically with his clones through his own abilities, or if he needs assistance from other people like the Yamanaka clan. So here in 298, page 2, Yamato says, thankfully I'd already planted him on it back at the hot springs, but it doesn't hurt to tail them in person as well. So there's some confusion about whether or not like Yamato actively talks to his clone or whether he needs to like put a seed on something that he wants to track. So the suggestion is made that Yamato can talk to his clone because he's given his clone a seed. The clone swallows the seed and then he can talk to it uh, with the seed. That is not how it works. The seed that Yamato is referring to here is that he like put a seed of chakra in Sai, essentially. Like he, when they were at the hot springs, he like put it in his food, and Sai swallowed it, and so his doppelganger is able to track Sai based on the chakra seed inside Sai resonating with Yamato himself, but that doesn't have anything to do with the communication between Yamato's clone and his main body, and we'll see more of that in just a second, right? So here, 298, page 06, they're going after Sai. Sai has left to hang out with Orochimaru and all that. Now, this is interesting. I would actually love to know the original, like, Japanese for this. What Yamato says is, until just now, I was in communication with my wood doppelganger who was here via our wireless implants. So, I personally, the way I'd like to interpret that is that they just have the telepathic ability to talk to each other. And we don't need to read into it too much. But the phrase wireless implant is kind of weird. Does this mean that, like, Yamato normally wouldn't be able to do this, but he puts some piece of technology in his head, and then when he makes a wood clone, that wood clone also gets, like, that same piece of technology? Like, it's a cybernetic enhancement or something like that. And that way they can talk to each other. Or is he using the term wireless implant to refer to, that's just like the phrase he happens to use for his like personal wood ability? If he achieved this via a technological modification, then Hashirama might not be able to do this on his own. But if it's just a weird phrasing describing his ability, then Hashirama probably can do the same thing. Going on to page 299, let's see. So Yamato says, I have a special power that enables me to suppress Jinchuriki, so you don't need to worry too much about that. So I think that, like, granted he says Jinchuriki and not Biju, but I think this goes to support my interpretation of, you know, it's not just raw physical strength that Hashirama is using to suppress Kurama. It's a special ability. It's like an anti-Biju hack is the way that I look at it. I mean, that's not the right term exactly, but you know, it's like more analogous to that than just like a physical arm wrestling feat. So chapter 300, page 18, we have this moment where Yamato has like a little reaction surprise thing. He goes like, oh, and this is in response to his doppelganger. So it doesn't look like he has like a fucking headset on or anything. I don't know, maybe he has something in his brainstem, I don't fucking know, or in his like ocular, why am I blanking on the word for, like, auditory nerve? There we go, auditory nerve. So this could be his implant, but like he very clearly receives a signal from his clone. It doesn't involve the seed. Want an explanation on the seeds? Well, we get that over here in chapter 301. So Naruto and Sasuke swallow these seeds. If they get separated, it says these seeds are transmitters for tracking. It's a ninja tool that only resonates to my chakra. I planted a few inside clothing in his meals. Blah blah blah. So basically, like, if they manipulate the chakra causes the seed to resonate, and then that like connects to Yamato. So I think the thing here is that like Yamato can, like, things that have the same chakra nature or whatever can resonate with each other. Like the chakra crystal around Naruto's neck resonates with Yamato's like Hashirama cells, Hashirama chakra, whatever you want to call it. Hashirama can, quote unquote, resonate. Fucking Hashirama. Yamato can resonate with his own clones because they're made of wood and he has wood jutsu. He doesn't need the seeds to be able to do that, right? So, like, he can talk to, communicate with, track, stay in touch with his clones just inherently because they both have, like, resonating Hashirama cell wood shit. If he wants to track somebody else or resonate with somebody else, he has to give them the wood. Long pause. Basically, the way that he gives them the wood, pause, is that he puts his seed inside them, pause. And so it's just like, he gives them the seed, they swallow his seed, and then now that they have his wood inside them, they can, I regret saying any of this stuff out loud, he can track them that way. But it's the property of the wood, it's the property of the wood style jutsu that allows him to maintain the connection. If his clone is already made of wood, he wouldn't need to give the wood a seed, because the seed is just more wood and the clone is already made of wood. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, I was I doubted last time that he was actually using Kakuan's 10th edict, but he is. He got the kanji on his hand and everything. It's the same technique. Um, I don't think there's anything else. He's suppressing the chakra specifically. Here he comes. He suppresses the chakra some more. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that, like, the actual term of the fucking the term clone gets used to refer specifically to the Zetsu. So the Zetsu are literally clones because they are just grown from the ground up from Hashirama cells. That's a bit different from what's happening with Yamato. So I think that Kabuto's use of the term is clunky at best. This, by the way, if people need to find it, is in chapter 606. And then here from chapter 604, we have this statement from this Zetsu over here, who says that the clones themselves can telepathically talk to each other over limited distances. So I think we've put all that together, like, and he's just literally a clone of Hashirama. So I think Hashirama himself has a telepathic ability to talk to his clones. And that's it. Hopefully that seems pretty fair. And then there's some confusion about the seed, but the seed is, like, essentially Yamato extending that ability towards things that aren't wood themselves. Okay, so catching up on chat a little bit here. Certain B says, in my opinion, all the majestic attire Susanoo durability feats apply to Madara's own true form Susanoo, because the attacks hit the Susanoo Yes, that makes sense. I think that makes perfect sense. Yep. Shinigami says Yamanaka, is hot as an adult. Yeah, I think that's a perfectly valid take. Certain B says Hashirama is a Biju counter, so I don't take Madara plus Biju versus Hashirama as a direct strength feat for Hashirama to put him over Madara in a significant way. Yeah, I think Sage's perspective on that was he kept saying in his Hashirama video that, like, Hashirama was a full Nine Tails level of power above Madara because Madara had to use the Nine Tails against him. And again, like, I definitely sympathize with the perspective in that I think Madara was probably like, I should probably go out and get a weapon to help me win against Hashirama because I'm not going to win without it. And he chose to get the Nine Tails, and that says something. But I don't think that results in, like, you can't really boil that down to a flat power level increase like that, because the interaction between the fucking that particular, like, Kakuan jutsu versus the Biju, it's weird, right? It's like he just kind of gets countered and taken out of the fight, and I don't know, it's more ambiguous than that, I think. Let's see. I think Yamato is referring to his bud thing specifically. Yeah, I think so too. I think that makes sense, right? It's just like part of his wood nature or something like that. Shinigami said, yeah. Yeah, I do tend to. I've been told that I'm like a dad with no kids. Like, I can't help myself with the dad jokes. I don't think I'll ever really outgrow them. How about No says, okay, you just checked the Roz. The term pacify is not in the Japanese, just stopped or halted. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's hear it. Appreciate you sharing the text there. Okay, so actually, since you know more about Japanese than I do, I would like to run something by you. I think that it is incorrect to, like, what you just posted in chat right now. If I referred to that as yeah, the wood style, yep, Yamato just handing out the wood style. If I referred to what you just wrote, how about no, as kanji, I said thank you for sending me the kanji that you just said, the kanji that you sent in chat, that would be incorrect, right? Because it looks like what you sent is a mixture of hiragana, katakana, and kanji. The kanji specifically are, like, the characters derived from Chinese, and hiragana and katakana are two other additional forms of writing, which are often used, like, simultaneously. And then there's also furigana, right, which is hiragana, but that's used like supplementary to kanji to sound it out, if I understand correctly. So really, like, I think people in the community tend to refer to Japanese text like with the umbrella term of kanji, but that's not technically correct, right? Like, kanji is one of the writing systems in written Japanese, but it is not a term that applies to all forms of writing. That is what my Google foo has told me, but I would love to hear it from people who are actually proficient with the language and not just like, you know, Google. But that being said, I'd love to hear this phrase too, so let's hear it out. The jutsu that stopped Naruto earlier. Ah, okay, cool.
ナルトを止めたさっきの術
Saki no jutsu. Cool. Yeah, like this is this would be Naruto, right? Then that would be the katakana, and then this is a hiragana character. These are all like hiragana, but this is kanji, if I understand correctly. Okay, so very briefly, let's talk about other like respect slash disrespect feats. This is just random shit that I found that may or may not be useful to the arguments. I think we talked about this before, right? This is Obito gassing up the first Tokage. That's totally fine. We went over this stuff before, I think. Madara has a statement in chapter 589 where he says, like, the only one that could ever stop me is Hashirama. He's no longer with us. Okay, so even Madara has like a lot of respect and admiration for Hashirama, obviously, but still. Let's see. There's this thing about like Orochimaru acknowledging that Hashirama is stronger than Tobirama, that he wouldn't be able to control him or restrain him. Not a big surprise there, but you know, if you're looking for this feat or whatever, it's in chapter 620, or that statement. Here is Madara with the majestic attire Susanoo. He's got the armor on Kurama, and he's inside the Susanoo as well. He refers to, this is in chapter 621, he refers to what Hashirama is doing as wood-style wood expulsion jutsu, perfect for taking on difficult beasts, excuse me. So, yeah. Then, okay, here's the Thousand Arm Kanon. This is where they start to take things more seriously. This is when Hashirama like defeats Madara, but of course, like we talked about it last time, it's a little bit more complicated because Tobirama is here, but still. And then this is the victory feat, is chapter 626. Let's see. Yeah, this is the thing over here where, like, again, like I don't really know what to make of this, but if you're looking for ways to dispute Madara being the strongest, this would be a piece of evidence you could use. It's 661.009, because Madara does say you two brothers can't regain your full power. So you could look at that and you could say that throughout the entirety of the fight, that Hashirama was definitively, Hashirama and Tobirama, neither of them were as strong as they were when they were alive. So what that actually means in terms of how that affects their fight, like what the delta is between their current power and their full power, I don't know, but you could definitely use this to dispute whether or not the like baseline power level of an Edo Tensei, at least for those two characters, is equivalent to their alive self. This makes me lean more towards the Edo versions being slightly stat nerfed compared to their alive selves. But then in terms of overall combat efficacy, I think you should still factor in the regeneration, both the healing and the like stamina regeneration, right? Both of those play a big role at the end of the day. For Madara feats, we've got this stuff we already talked about before, 560 over here. Yeah, I think I keep forgetting to mention, like I keep forgetting about this, but this, because there's such a like a small like quick panel that gets brought up very quickly and then thrown away or like moved on from very quickly. But even before he gets Sage Mode, the Hashirama cells are enhancing Madara's ability to perceive incoming attacks, so that's worth noting. This is just a random thing I found. 568. This is where we actually see Madara like control Kurama for the first time, and like, well, I'm guessing for the first time. This is like Kurama going through the motivations of the Jinchuriki and how much hatred he has for it and how like fed up he is with it. But yeah, so like now he restrains him with the jutsu. Now this is interesting to me, right? Like Hashirama is all bruised and bloodied and messed up, and he's talking to fucking Kurama. I think this means one of two things. One is that Hashirama went and found Kurama and had to fight him later to subdue him. And over the course of the fight, of like fighting one-on-one with Kurama, he got all bloodied up and fucked up. In which case, like, that kind of recontextualizes the power dynamic between those two characters. Another way to interpret this, though, is that this is right after the Valley of the End, um, after which, like, Kurama is basically just, like, hanging around, like, maybe he's been put to sleep or whatever, and Hashirama's done with Madara, so he goes over to Kurama in his already fatigued and bashed up state, and then restrains Kurama, um, and so it's not like a separate fight. Now, I think we might be able to clear that up by looking at Hashirama's appearance in this. So this is 626. Let me take a look real quick. This is not a big deal, but I'm just kind of curious. 626. Okay, so if we look at the appearance of Hashirama at the end of this fight, okay, so he is missing the armor part on his upper left shoulder. His flesh is exposed, and like the armor is kind of depleted or whatever over here, like stripped off. So if we look at this conversation here, hell, okay, there we go. So he does have that armor plate up. So this might have been a different fight. Like, you could argue that maybe this is a retcon, but I think what might have happened here is that, like, Kurama, like, got away, right? Like, he ran away after that fight, and then Hashirama had to go find him and track him down. When Kurama was fighting with Hashirama, he was able to, like, fight better without being controlled by Madara, to the point where he was actually able to, like, suppress or, like, to wound, to fight relative to Hashirama and, like, kind of fuck him up. And we might actually have a clue there as to what led to Hashirama's demise. Now, this is the pure speculation, pure headcanon stuff, but Hashirama is not in Sage mode here. So if my assumption is correct and he was actually, like, fighting Kurama, we know that Mito, his wife, becomes the fucking Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, right? Or why did I say Ten Tails? Of Kurama, obviously Kurama. So maybe he's like, it's kind of vaguely similar to what happens with Minato, right? Like, he fights Kurama to restrain him and gets him, like, under control, and, like, has to really exert himself to do it, and then Mito comes in, and then this is where Mito becomes a Jinchuriki. And then Hashirama extends himself so much that he dies, like, soon after this. It's like part of his sacrifice. I don't know. That's pure speculation, but I do kind of like that narrative, and that would explain, like, why he seems to, like, apparently die soon after the Madara interaction shit. This is just, like, the badass moment for Madara where he decides to nope out of the Edo Tensei. This is 591 for anybody looking for it. Over here, this is kind of a joke argument. Like, I don't really, like, we talked about it last time. I would never actually use this in a debate or anything, but I can just hear it now. I can hear somebody actually saying this in a debate where, like, it says this person cannot be stopped, just like Madara. Okay, so, you know, like, according to, I can hear, like, walkie-talkie or somebody making this argument. Like, according to Tobirama, non-derogatory, by the way, according to Tobirama, like, are you aware that Madara is actually unstoppable? You can just hear it now, right? So I want to put that out there just in case people want to talk about it. I think there's this also. This could have been a Madara thing, but we talked about this last time as well. They awaken a profound love and power that exceeds even Senju's. Okay, so that, like, basically, the argument goes that if Madara is capable of unlocking a power that exceeds Senju's, the only Senju that is alive at this point in the series is fucking Hashirama. So, by definition, Madara's power would have to exceed... This is, it's so convoluted, but... Tobirama is fuck me. Tobirama is saying that the Senju, the fucking. I think I'm reaching my limit for the stream tonight. Tobirama is saying that the Uchiha clan members who love so much, they get the love amp, and that means that they will be stronger than the Senju. There is only one Senju left at this point. I mean, granted, there are, like, descendants of the Senju, like the Uzumaki or whatever, but, like, there's only one actual OG Senju around at this point, Tobirama and Hashirama. Oh, there's two. I'm sorry, there's two. Tobirama and Hashirama. But Hashirama is stronger than Tobirama anyway. So in order for this statement to be qualified to be true, then Madara would have to be stronger than both of them. And since he has the eyes and the love buff, he's stronger than both of them. Obviously, I don't put a whole lot of weight in that argument, but there it is. What if I even put anything here? Oh yeah, so 6:30. Again, I don't know if we should even like give a shit about this, but technically speaking, like Madara is like the Ten Tails isn't holding back. You might look at this and say that Madara scales below, like Madara's durability scales below the DC or AP of the Ten Tails Biju Bomb, because he says, I'll need to move soon, which means he'll need to get out of the way of the Biju Bomb, so maybe that's a durability anti-feat, but I don't know, maybe he's just saying he needs to move because everybody else will be dead and there won't be anything to do there. The context, for me, it seems like the context there is that he's worried that he's going to get like caught up in the explosion, then have to regenerate, and it's going to be a problem. And he does like choose not to defend against the meteors that rain down beforehand, along with Mu, right? It's Kabuto in Mu's body, because he can just regenerate. So I don't know. Just putting that out there for data. We already talked about the clones. What's this? Oh, and here's another meme argument, right? That like, fucking Itachi says that he shall surpass Madara and become the ultimate shinobi. If becoming the ultimate shinobi means surpassing Madara, you could interpret this as Itachi saying that Madara is the ultimate shinobi, and therefore, that's why he needs to surpass him to become the ultimate shinobi. So this is Itachi giving his opinion that Madara, not Hashirama, is the ultimate shinobi. But I think also there's another meme argument here in fucking 158, right? Naruto's talking to Tsunade about the fourth Hokage, Minato, and he is described as a shinobi with unparalleled capacity, a true one of a kind, overflowing with talent for jutsu and intelligence, blah 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 blah, right? So he's unparalleled, which means nobody's on his level. So well, Tsunade said it, so he's like, oh, even Jiraiya says everybody pales in comparison to the Fourth Lord. That would include Hashirama. He didn't say everybody alive, everybody here at this table, everybody who's relevant in this arc of the story. He says everybody. So according to Jiraiya and Tsunade, like, granted, he doesn't know about Kaguya or whatever, so we can maybe exclude her. But according to Jiraiya and Tsunade, like any non-Otsutsuki character would scale below Minato. So Minato solos the verse, right? Obviously, I don't agree with that interpretation, but there it is. There's the data. You can do with it whatever you want. I can just hear that coming up in a debate, though. I can see it now, right? Anyway, white Zetsu have the ability to talk telepathically with each other. Yeah, over a limited radius. It's like they can kind of talk to each other through the underground or something. I don't exactly know how it works, but yeah, you have to figure that like two-tone Zetsu is always able to kind of like know what's going on. I don't know where to find it, but I'm pretty sure that I'm picturing it in my head now. There's a moment where one of the Zetsus, like, I think fights against Chojuro, and then he gets quote unquote cut in half, but then he goes under the earth and he's like, I am the earth. And so he like kind of merges with the ground or something, and then it's implied that like he can sense everything that's going on and then communicate that to the other Zetsu. I don't remember exactly like how that goes or where to find it, but I have this vague memory of like Zetsu actually being really useful for communication and relaying information and shit like that, and it's because of his like planty, earthy, like woody abilities, something nature, something tree, something dark side, right? Yeah. Shared your bi character. Oh yeah, awesome. I'll check that out right after the stream. Thank you. How about No says that's roughly correct. So for context, a lot of shonen media writes both. That's what the smaller text is. Essentially, the written phonetically version easier for younger audiences to understand. Cool. Oh yeah, that makes sense. We'll also note that in the Japanese, rather than just suppress, the term is blank, that words which is specifically forcibly, by force, restrain, hold down, suppress. Okay, gotcha. That does actually add a lot of context there. I appreciate that. The glaze for Madara is cringe. It's understandable though. Like he and Hashirama are both like depicted as supreme shinobi, and then I think the inverse Hashirama glaze is stronger. One thing that I wasn't able to find was all of the instances and references to Hashirama being like the god of shinobi. But like he gets called that like a dozen times or something over the course of the series, right? So I guess since I don't really know if we have time to start talking about like debates and stuff like now, I'm getting pretty tired. Um, but one thing that I can do for sure before we sign off for the night is I can look for so I was I haven't read through the fourth data book again yet, but we can take a look at some of the stuff from the third data book. So assuming these are the same pages as the printed version, no, I think it's like one page off. Okay, so like this from the third data book, official English translation. You can go pick it up on like Crunchyroll and all that. Like I said, um, oh, you hate Madara? Why do you hate Madara? Be curious to learn more about that. Um, so where does this? Okay, so on this databook page, it says through his rivalry with Senju Hashirama, the shinobi he admired, Madara became stronger. You could interpret that as being like, well, they were rivals, so they were equal in strength. I don't think that's a very strong interpretation, but you know, like they obviously had a rivalry. I don't think the rivalry was like the fact that they rivaled each other meant that they were equal in strength. I don't think that's what that means. Okay, so going on to page 160. Is it really that far? Got all these notes that are disorganized. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, so Hashirama's entry is here on 160. A magnificent shinobi lighting the way for peace on Earth. What did I want to say specifically? Let's just read this page. It's short. During the Great Age of Shinobi War, one clan was known far and wide for their unrivaled strength. They were called the Morino Senju clan, which means the Thousand Hands of the Forest. Their leader was Senju Hashirama, a master of wood-style ninjutsu and highly gifted as a shinobi. He's able to unify his fractured and diverse people. Senju Hashirama was truly a hero of the age. Established Konohana Gakure, 5 great shinobi nations. His skill in manipulating both wood style ninjutsu and tail beast made Hashirama without peer in the shinobi world, right? I think this has come up in debates before. I feel like I've heard Sage say this. Maybe it was somebody else. But yeah, so while Hashirama was alive, this is using the past tense, obviously. If we're going to use arguments that this is like captioning specific moments in the series, okay, this is when Hashirama was alive, okay? So they are, it's literally pointing to the picture of them, right? So if we're going to use those arguments, they would apply here too. Here is a statement that he is peerless. This can go and reinforce the idea that Hashirama himself was stronger than Madara when they were alive. I honestly do agree with that. And then here's that statement again from Obito. It was inevitable that somebody like Hashirama, blah, 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 would build an enormous village. Okay. Let's see. Yamato's entry is on 174. I don't think I really found out much from his entry, but just in case people are looking for it, or 173 is his like intro page. It said on 176 that he was acknowledged to be at the top of the Anbu Black Ops from the third Hokage's reign. I was a bit confused about that because I thought that fucking Itachi was at the peak of the Black Ops, but maybe not. He was promoted to captain, but that's like squad leader. Maybe he's not the best. But this is really weird because that means at some point, like, Yamato was probably in the Anbu along with Itachi and was considered better than Itachi. Which is it's gonna be spicy. So I don't have an opinion about this. I just thought it was kind of a weird thing to come across. Let's see. 176. Yamato's wood style Hijutsu, its origin lies in the DNA transplanted in him from the first Hokage. A live human experiment produced by Orochimaru was a past that could have easily traumatized him, but Yamato embraces it. The reason is that the wood style ninjutsu is his greatest weapon for protecting his comrades. Okay, so it doesn't refer to him as a clone in the data books. It actually shows him as like the subject of an experiment. So he is a recipient of grafting, essentially, more so than like from Elden Ring, essentially, as opposed to being like an actual clone. The use of the term clone there from Kabuto is a little iffy in my opinion. Let's see. 192. I had something written down. Yeah, here's some backstory on Madara. What do you say? The one clan who could rival the so-called invincible Senju, the Uchiha wielded the powerful Sharingan. Their leader, Uchiha Madara, struck fear into the hearts of shinobi on the battlefield. Again, I can hear the wormy argument that, like, well, he must have struck fear into the hearts of Hashirama because Hashirama is part of the data set of people on the battlefield. Like, no, like, please don't do that, please. Um, let's see. Oh, wait, hang on a second. It said about, I forgot this thing about Yamato. Where is it? Says, yeah, here we go. A technique possible for only one who can manipulate wood style. It silences even-tailed beasts. So again, like, I think it would be appropriate to look at the Japanese original here, but like the phrasing is it silences the tailed beast, right? Like it doesn't grapple them into submission, it silences them. And it's a little shaky, but you might look at that and be like, okay, well, this kind of goes towards its being sort of a hacky type thing. Here's Hashirama, like the starting of the this backstory. I don't think there's anything in here apart from gassing him up as being legendary and awesome and cool. There's not really a whole lot of scaling there. Let's go to page 300. Let's skip ahead a little bit. 300, where are you? Come on. Okay, so is it was page 300 in the data book itself? Okay, yeah. So here's the jutsu entry for Kakuan's 10th edict on enlightenment. Yamato has the character appear on his palm. Just says, laid out on the ground, 10 pillars that silence even disasters. Okay, a jutsu to forcibly control the chakra of tailed beasts using the power of wood style for the jutsu to be invoked. It is necessary for either the tailed beast or Jinchuriki to be in possession of the chakra crystal. Obviously, for Naruto, that makes sense. For Hashirama versus Kurama, it's not necessarily relevant. 10 pillars that can restrain the beast appear when the caster's palm comes in contact with the tail beast chakra. So this language, again, has me leaning more towards it being kind of a hack in that it's like forcibly controlling the chakra of, as opposed to like it does seem to have like an anti-Bichu property to it based on this, in my reading of it. Let's see. I think that's basically it. There's more stuff on Yamato that I hadn't like gotten to on my own research, but I don't think there's anything here. Just if you want more about wood style, right, here's this. There's some more stuff over here, the domed wall. And then here's like more information about the wood doppelganger. Does it say anything about the communication? Transforming a doppelganger into shape of seed, it can serve as a transmitter. Oh, interesting. Okay. So that, if this is true, that actually makes things make much more sense. I think this actually does kind of resolve the question about communication. So the seeds themselves are actually clones, right? The reason why this is actually kind of crazy to think about, but like the reason why Naruto and Sakura and Sai can be tracked by Yamato is that Yamato makes a clone, then he turns the clone into a seed, and then the seed resonates with a transmitter. If that's like as a transmitter with Yamato's chakra, if that's the case, then that just goes to reinforce that like his clones can do that. Like his clones can just transmit information, so that he can talk to them telepathically, and that lines up with the Zetsu thing. Is this really what it's saying? When turned into the shape of a seed, it becomes, yeah. Huh. So this is actually just like a shrunk down clone of Yamato. That adds more unfortunate context to the whole putting his wood. Okay, I've said enough about that. Yeah. So let's see. Shinigami says, hated him ever since Madara versus Aizen Death Battle. Oh, okay, yeah. The glaze for him was insane. They did anything for him to win Death Battle prediction. Like, yeah, I mean, like, the Uchiha got like a lot of glaze in the community, right? It's sort of a meme, like how thoroughly they are elevated. Let's say, okay, so at this point we could continue talking about debate stuff, but I think now that we've gone through all of the feats and statements and stuff like that I could find, we got a chance to talk about the third data book. I think this is a good place to end the stream for tonight. I think next week we'll start off by doing a debate review, meaning that like I've listened to, I think 3 different debates on Hashirama versus other people, and I'll finish listening to Six's debate tourney that he had on the subject. And we'll start off by talking about, okay, so now that we understand the backdrop, we understand the context inherent to all this stuff. Now let's examine how people talk about it. How do we go from this data set to the takes that are circulating around the community? How do certain content creators approach interpretation of this stuff? And I think we should be able to knock out a response, or at least start a response to this video as well. Maybe we'll just do highlights because we've already talked about a lot of the major arguments. And I think at this point, rather than reviewing every single feat, it's more interesting to me to just discuss the fucking the language that's being used, like the tactics, the rhetoric, the way that we talk about what we're talking about. Let me check one thing, but I think that basically I'm gonna wrap it up in just a second here. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's it from me tonight. Thank you so much for stopping by. Appreciate the engagement as always. Hope you guys have a good week. Thursday we're gonna do another stream of Breath of the Wild. I have a very, very special stream coming up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from this Thursday, but the next 2 weeks will probably be Breath of the Wild. Maybe we'll start on Tears of the Kingdom, but probably not. And then, yeah, next Sunday we'll do debate review, conversation analysis, stuff like that. In the meantime, thank you for hanging out. Have a great weekend. Take care. Be safe. And yeah, all the best. How about No says, for the databook, a technique that utilizes the power of wood release to forcibly suppress the chakra of a tailed beast. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, like, it starts to get a little weird because, like, technically speaking, Kurama is just chakra, right? Like, I think that's how Karin describes the Biju, as lumps of living chakra. So I mean, I don't want to get into that right now, but like technically speaking, these teeth, this tongue, this spit is all just chakra that's been congealed. But that's a whole other thing, right? So anyway, yeah, and thank you again for all the scans and the or the translations and the context for the language. It's always a huge help. I really appreciate it. All right, have a good night, everybody.